In the depths of the Pacific, a grade 9 beast emperor has reportedly broken through, one alert read. Another warned coastal cities to strengthen their defenses. There was even a report about a tragedy in Liang City a month ago, where a gap in the defense net led to thousands of deaths. I sighed and rubbed my temples, putting the phone down. The flood of memories in my mind finally started to make sense. I had crossed over. I was no longer on Earth, but on a place called Blue Star. Civilization and technology here looked almost identical to my old world, but there were two massive differences: ferocious beasts and abilities. The beasts were bloodthirsty monsters ravaging the planet, and abilities were the only way humanity could fight back. I couldn't believe it. I had just finished my graduate school celebration party, drank a bit too much, and woke up here. Talk about a bad hangover. To make matters worse, my new life wasn't exactly a winning hand. My name was still Su Jingming, and I was a high school senior at Jiangqing Second High. Aside from being unusually handsome, I was as ordinary as they came. Even the ability I had awakened was the lowest of the low, grade E, weak current. I stared at my right hand and snapped my fingers. Tiny, flickering arcs of blue-white electricity danced between my fingertips. In my old world, this would have been a miracle. Here, it was a joke. On Blue Star, everyone awakens an ability at 16. They range from controlling fire to transforming into beasts or healing wounds. The grades go from D all the way up to SSS. Most people end up with grade D. Only the lucky ones get C or B, and those with grade A are considered geniuses. As for S grade and above, you might not see one for decades. 2 years ago, during my awakening ceremony, I had pulled a grade E. It fell under the lightning element of the natural category, which sounded cool, but the weak part was literal. The damage I could deal was barely on par with a cheap stun gun. I was basically a human cattle prod. Am I really supposed to conquer the world as a portable battery? I muttered, propping my chin on my hand. I looked around the classroom. It was break time, and my classmates were chatting loudly. In the corner of the blackboard, a countdown clock screamed at me. 1 day until the college entrance examination. In this country, Great Xia, the exam on June 7th was everything. It was the only way to get into an ability user university. Becoming a true ability user meant status, privilege, and power. Right now, I was just an awakener, someone with potential but no real strength. To actually fight beasts, you had to train for years to reach grade 1. A university could cut that time in half. But with a grade E ability, my chances of getting in were 0. Don't all transmigrators get a cheat code? I whispered to myself. Where's my system? As if on cue, a mechanical voice rang out in my head. Deep Blue system activating. System activated successfully. Starter pack being distributed. Asterisk starter pack distributed. Would you like to claim it now? Asterisk. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. I sat there with my mouth hanging open, stunned. Then, a wave of pure ecstasy washed over me. I knew exactly what this meant. This was my ticket to the top. I took a long, shaky breath to calm my racing heart. I didn't claim it immediately. Instead, I asked internally, what's in the pack? 200 ability points and the grade S ability, Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. My breath hitched. I didn't know what ability points were yet, but grade S? That was legendary. The news had just said the United States only produced one S-grade user in 4 years. Great Xia hadn't seen one in 3. Anyone who awakened an S-grade ability was destined to become a powerhouse who could guard an entire region. System, if I claim this, I really get a grade S ability? I asked, double-checking. Yes. My eyes lit up. This was it. The chance to change my fate. Jingming. Stop daydreaming. Old Chun is here. My seatmate whispered, nudging me. I snapped back to reality. I hadn't even noticed the bell. Standing at the podium was a middle-aged man with a buzz cut, our homeroom teacher, Chen Fan. I forced myself to stay calm. Claiming a legendary ability in the middle of a crowded classroom was a terrible idea. I had to wait until I got home. 12 years of hard work lead to this moment. Chun Fan's voice boomed across the room. The exam is tomorrow. Stay focused. If you're taking the liberal arts track, check your stationery. If you're taking the martial arts track, prepare your combat suits and weapons. I leaned back, my mind racing. In Great Xia, universities were split into 2 paths. And thanks to the system, My path was about to get a whole lot more interesting. In Great Xia, there were only two paths for a student. You either went to a liberal arts university to study books, or you went to a martial arts university to become an awakened warrior. The college entrance exam reflected that. For the liberal arts kids, it was just another test in a classroom. But for us on the martial arts track, it was a hunt. We had to wear combat suits, carry cold steel, and enter designated zones to kill fierce beasts. Your grade was written in the blood of the monsters you took down. It was a choice every student had to make. If you didn't have confidence in your strength, or if you awakened a trash-tier ability, you could choose the liberal arts path and live a normal life. My predecessor only had a level 1 ability, the lowest of the low. Yet, he had still chosen the martial arts exam. I didn't plan on changing that. In this world, if you didn't fight for a chance at the top, you were destined to be a nobody. I'll say it one last time, Chen Fan said, his eyes scanning the room. The martial arts exam carries a risk of death. If your ability is below level 3, I don't recommend it. He paused, his gaze lingering on me for a second. I just rubbed my nose and looked away. You have until 9 tonight to change your mind. If you want to switch to liberal arts, come see me. Class dismissed. I knew why he looked at me. In the entire class, I was the only one crazy enough to attempt the martial arts exam with a level 1 ability. Statistically, students like me were the ones who ended up as casualties. But I knew the reality of this world. Every few years, a beast tide would breach a city's defenses, bypassing the electric fences and the military. Thousands of people would die in an instant. I didn't want to be a helpless victim when that day came. I needed power. Jingming, you're really not going to change your mind? I looked up. My best friend, Zhang Hao, was leaning over my desk. He had a bowl cut and a concerned look on his face. He also had a level 1 ability, but he'd given up on fighting years ago to focus on his studies. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm sticking with it. Zhang Hao gave me a thumbs up, though he looked skeptical. You've got guts. There are 6 or 7 of us with level 1 abilities in this class, and you're the only one going for it. Why? You want to join me? I joked. Hell no. He laughed, waving his hands. I'm going to a normal university to spend 4 years chasing girls. I'll leave the hero stuff to you. I rolled my eyes and packed my bag. We said our goodbyes, and I headed home. My apartment was quiet. My parents had died in a beast tide when I was 10, leaving me with nothing but the house and a bit of insurance money. I was used to the silence. In my past life, I had been an orphan too. But today, the silence felt different. It felt like the calm before a storm. I sat on my bed and pulled up the blue virtual screen in my mind. It was time. System, claim the newbie package. Asterisk newbie package issued. 200 ability points received. Grade S ability. Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. Initiating. Asterisk. A progress bar appeared in my vision. 10%. 20%. 30%. Boom. It felt like a grenade detonated inside my chest. A surge of violent energy exploded from my core, racing through my veins. Countless arcs of blue and purple electricity began to dance across my skin. I felt my body lift off the bed as I became a living ball of lightning. The air hissed and crackled. The energy was too much for the room to handle. The lightning surged outward, swallowing everything. The sofa, the TV, the coffee table, everything the sparks touched disintegrated or burst into flames. The windows shattered, glass spraying into the street as the purple glow lit up the neighborhood. Outside, the sky turned pitch black. A massive vortex of clouds swirled directly over my apartment building, flashing with unnatural purple light. People on the street stopped and stared. Neighbors started calling the fire department, screaming about an explosion. The local military garrison went into high alert, fearing a high-level beast was attacking the city. Inside the storm, I felt a strange warmth. I wasn't burning, I was changing. 80%, 90%, 99%. A final, massive bolt of purple lightning tore through the roof and slammed directly into me. The world went white. Then, as quickly as it started, the clouds vanished. The sun came back out. The apartment was a charred ruin, but I was standing in the middle of it, unharmed. I opened my eyes. A flicker of purple light darted across my pupils. I felt a terrifying power humming under my skin. I raised my right hand and gave a small thought. Instantly, thick purple lightning crackled between my fingers. It wasn't the weak, pale spark I used to have. This was dense, ancient, and deadly. This was a great S ability. This was the purple cloud divine thunder. I looked around at my destroyed living room and scratched my head. The power was incredible, but the cleanup was going to be a nightmare. My living room looked like it had been hit by a tactical missile. Debris was scattered everywhere. Small fires flickered on pieces of what used to be my furniture. The walls and floor were riddled with deep, jagged craters from the electrical arcs. I felt a cold sweat run down my back. During the transformation, I'd sensed something was wrong and tried my best to suppress the energy. If I hadn't, I wouldn't just be looking at a ruined living room. I would be looking at a pile of rubble. The purple cloud divine thunder came from ancient Eastern legends. It was one of the 10 primal thunders, capable of slaying immortals and destroying gods. Even though I had just awakened and couldn't tap into its full potential, a total release of power would have vaporized this entire floor. The whole building would have collapsed. I would have survived the fall, but my neighbors wouldn't have been so lucky. I really underestimated this power. I should have gone to the outskirts of the city to open that beginner gift pack. Still, I couldn't help but grin. The stronger the ability, the better my future would be. Then I remembered the other reward. The system had mentioned 200 ability points. I wondered what they were for. As soon as the thought crossed my mind, the system's voice echoed in my head. Ability points could be earned by killing ferocious beasts. I could spend them to level up my stats or my skills. It was exactly like experience points in a video game. It was a simple system, but effective. I called up my status panel. Small plus signs flickered next to my stats and skills. My base stats weren't bad. Most new awakeners started with around 100 points in physique and spirit. But when I looked at my spearmanship, I frowned. I had practiced the spear for 6 years. To see it rated as basic felt like a slap in the face. Skill mastery was divided into basic, intermediate, advanced, master, grandmaster, and perfection. I was still at the bottom of the ladder. I'd only been practicing it for 2 years, so a basic rating there made more sense. I looked at my 200 points. I could upgrade my skills or my base attributes. Tomorrow was the annual college entrance exam. I needed to spend these points where they would count the most. Physique and spirit were the foundation. If those went up, my combat power and my control over the thunder would improve naturally. System, add the points, I muttered. I split the 200 points evenly between physique and spirit. Immediately, I felt my blood boil. It felt like a raging river surging through my veins. My mind cleared, becoming sharp and focused. Even my connection to the purple cloud divine thunder grew tighter. I gripped my fist, feeling the raw power humming in my marrow. My physique was now 141, and my spirit was 160. Each point gave me 0.2 in a stat. It wasn't a huge jump, but it was pure, instant growth with no side effects. With a great S ability and these stats, I was easily one of the top candidates in Jiangnan province. I wasn't the absolute strongest yet, though. This province had 80 million people. Over 700,000 students were taking the exam tomorrow. Among them were monsters who might only have grade A abilities but possessed years of elite training. They had rich families who could afford master teachers and bodyguards to take them into the wilderness to hunt real beasts. As an orphan, I couldn't compete with their resources. But I had the divine thunder. That was my equalizer. Boom. A sudden, violent crash shook the room. Before I could even turn around, my front door was kicked off its hinges. It flew across the room and slammed into the wall. A group of firefighters in orange gear rushed in, clutching high-pressure hoses. They stopped dead when they saw me. There was no raging fire, just a guy standing in the middle of a charred room. Hello, I said, blinking at them. They spent a few minutes checking for hidden embers and safety hazards. Once they were satisfied I wasn't going to blow up the rest of the block, they turned to leave. Before they walked out, they actually took the time to prop my broken door back into the frame. It was a nice gesture, even if the lock was completely gone. The captain of the fire squad didn't just leave. He pressed a business card into my hand before heading out. He told me my lightning ability was perfect for controlling fires or explosions in facilities with sensitive electronic equipment. He even promised that if I looked him up at the Jiangxing Fire Department after I graduated, he'd have a job waiting for me. In the eyes of most people, that was a dream setup. The fire department was a stable, government-sanctioned unit. Plus, with water and fire ability users on the squad, the risk of dying on the job was incredibly low. It was a solid, respectable future. But I wasn't most people. Not anymore. I tossed the card onto my bedside table without a second thought. I grabbed my long spear leaning against the wall and walked out the door. Xiaoming, was that a fire just now? Are you okay? It was Old Man Yang from downstairs. I'd lived in this building for 18 years, and all the neighbors knew me. The original Su Jingming was a gentle kid, well-liked by the elderly folks who spent their afternoons walking their grandkids in the courtyard. I'm fine, Uncle Yang, I said with a polite smile. Everything's under control. Good, good. Heading to the martial arts hall. Yeah, I nodded. I need to get some practice in. I slung the spear over my shoulder and left the complex. I hopped on a bus, transferred to the subway, and finally stood before a massive, modern skyscraper. It was 40 meters tall, clad in sleek silver and white panels that shimmered like the scales of a giant beast. On the side of the building, for bold characters were written in a sweeping, powerful script, Thunder Martial Arts Hall. To become a true awakened, you had to hone your body and mind. You had to push your abilities to the limit. Most families couldn't afford a private training room, so martial arts halls filled the gap. In this country, two names reigned supreme, Thunder and Warbear. They had branches in every city, even here in a relatively remote place like Jiangxing. While there were dozens of smaller private gyms, Thunder was the only one that offered free access to high school students. That was why I was here. I needed to see exactly how much the Divine Thunder had boosted my stats. I watched other awakened and even full-fledged supers carrying their weapons into the building. The founder of this place, Luo Hong, was a legendary Grade S lightning user. I wondered if one day I'd be powerful enough to build a legacy like this. I shook off the thought and headed inside. The hall had 6 floors, each spanning tens of thousands of square meters. The third floor was reserved for students. Since it was Wednesday, the younger students were still in class, and most seniors were at home resting for tomorrow's exam. The usually packed hall was nearly empty, with only about a dozen people scattered across the main lobby. Then, I spotted a familiar face. She was about 5'7", with sharp, cold features and long, elegant legs highlighted by denim shorts. She looked trendy, expensive, and completely out of place in a free public hall. Sister Chi, you're here at Thunder. I called out, walking over with a smile. This was Tang Chi. She was my cousin, the daughter of my aunt who had looked after me since my parents died. We were the same age, though she was a few months older. We weren't close, mostly because the old Su Jingming was introverted and poor, while she was wealthy and popular. 2 years ago, when she awakened a Grade B ability, and I only managed Grade E, the gap between us became a canyon. Tang Chi looked surprised to see me. She gave a stiff, polite nod. Yeah, just accompanying a friend. That made sense. Her family was well off, so she usually trained at the Warbear Hall, where the annual membership fee was a staggering 100,000 yuan. I won't bother you then, I said, keeping it brief. I'm heading to a training room. As I walked away, I heard one of her friends whisper. It was a girl in a sundress with large, curious eyes. Chi, who was that? He's actually pretty handsome. My cousin, Su Jingming, Tang Chi replied, her brow furrowing slightly. He's a senior like us, taking the exam tomorrow. She looked confused. In the past, I would have avoided eye contact and scurried away. She couldn't understand why I had suddenly found the confidence to initiate a conversation. A guy in white casual clothes chimed in, grinning. Why the interest, Xiaoya? Looking for a boyfriend. Xiaoya didn't blush. She just shrugged. Why not? With those looks, as long as his strength isn't total trash, he'd be great arm candy. Tang Chi shook her head, her voice flat. Then you're going to be disappointed. He only awakened a Grade E ability. The spark in Xiaoya's eyes died instantly. Only Grade E? What a waste. In their world, circles were defined by background and power. These kids all had Grade B or C abilities and wealthy parents. To them, a Grade E user in cheap clothes wasn't even worth a second glance, no matter how good-looking he was. Grade E and he's still taking the combat exam. A guy with an earring mocked. You have to admire the courage. Courage or stupidity? Tang Chi sighed. The death rate for anyone below grade B in the exams is terrifying. I honestly wish he just wouldn't go. If my cousin had a grade B ability, she wouldn't have said a word. But grade E was just too weak. To her, going to the combat exam was a death wish. She probably thought I should have just stuck to the liberal arts track, graduated, and found a nice desk job. No monsters, no killing, no risk. It would have saved her mother a lot of gray hairs. All right, one of her friends said, sensing the mood. Let's drop it. We're here to see the Thunder Dojo, aren't we? True, Tang Chi replied, trying to shake off her annoyance. I've spent 3 years at the Raging Bear Dojo. This is my first time here. Let's relax before the big day tomorrow. As they wandered off, I was already inside a 20-square-meter private training room. Usually, these rooms required a reservation, but since the place was empty, I walked right in. I needed to know exactly what I was capable of now. First, I wanted to test my raw physical strength without using my ability. I unsheathed the long spear from my back. In this world, ordinary weapons couldn't even scratch the hide of a monster. You needed specialized gear. My spear was part of the Obsidian series from the Hangyuan group. It was nearly 2 meters long, crafted from a dark, heavy alloy. I gave the spear a quick flick. The metal hummed, but something felt off. The spear felt light. Way too light. I realized it wasn't the weapon that had changed, it was me. My body was significantly stronger than it had been yesterday. Weapons were graded just like abilities, S, A, B, and so on. The higher the grade, the tougher the alloy and the higher the price. This obsidian spear had cost me nearly 200,000 yuan. Between my training, gear, and combat techniques, I had spent almost everything. Most of it came from my aunt's generous help and the inheritance my parents left behind. Now, I had less than 50,000 yuan to my name. I couldn't afford a heavier weapon even if I wanted one. It'll have to do, I muttered. I began to warm up. I had been practicing with a spear since I was 12. For 6 years, I had drilled the basics, thrusting, sweeping, blocking, and striking, until they were burned into my muscle memory. I moved, and the spear became a black blur in the room. I felt my blood pumping and my muscles loosening up. Then I lunged. I aimed straight for the circular target on the wall. The tip of the spear slammed into the memory metal with a deafening crack. The target dented inward under the massive kinetic energy before slowly popping back into shape. I looked at the digital screen on the wall. 321 units. My eyes widened. Units were the standard measure of attack power. 1 unit was roughly equivalent to a high-grade explosive firework. Most people at my level could only hit about 100 units with raw strength. Before today, my maximum was 140. I had more than double my power. But that was just my body. Now, it was time for the real show. I triggered the purple dawn lightning. Purple bolts erupted from my skin, crackling and hissing like 1,000 snakes. I felt like a god of storms. I pointed a finger, and a bolt of violet lightning streaked across the room, slamming into the target. The memory metal buckled so hard it stayed deformed for nearly 10 seconds. The screen flashed a new number, 3,012 units. 3,000. I took a sharp breath. A typical rank 1 awaken usually averaged around 1,000 units. 3,000 was the territory of a mid-rank 1 warrior. And I wasn't even rank 1 yet. The gap between an E-grade and an S-grade ability was absolutely terrifying. But I can go higher, I whispered. I gripped my spear, letting the purple lightning flow into the obsidian shaft. I used the only combat technique I owned, a move I had spent months choosing because it perfectly blended spear play with lightning. Lightning Gale Break. I lunged. The spear transformed into a violet dragon of pure energy. The entire room shook as the impact roared like thunder. When the light faded, the target was gone. The center of the memory metal had melted into a smoking hole. Spiderweb cracks radiated across the entire wall, exposing the internal wiring. The digital screen was blank. It had short-circuited. This was a basic training room designed to handle attacks up to the high-rank 1 level. By destroying the equipment, I had just proven my attack power was equal to a top-tier professional warrior. I pulled the spear back and slung it over my shoulder, a confident smile tugging at my lips. The maintenance crew would fix the room, and I didn't have to pay for the damage. That was the rule for those strong enough to break things. Tomorrow's exam was going to be very interesting. I walked out of the training room, my spear heavy on my back. The hallway was quiet, but I could hear voices approaching from around the corner. It was Tang Chi and her group. Honestly, the Tyrant Bear Dojo is so much better, one of the guys complained. The rooms here are tiny, and the equipment is ancient. What do you expect? Xiaoya replied, her voice dripping with disdain. We pay 100,000 a year for our memberships. You get what you pay for. They sounded bored. They had come here to relax before the big exam, but the Thunder Dojo clearly wasn't living up to their standards. They were just about to head to the combat sims when the building suddenly groaned. A sharp, ear-piercing crash echoed through the corridor. The floor beneath our feet shuddered. That energy, it's at the awakened level, the boy with the earrings whispered. He had a C-grade mental ability, making him hypersensitive to power fluctuations. In the high school wing, Xiaoya frowned, her eyebrows knitting together. The local geniuses who've reached that level all train at Tyrant Bear. Who could be here? They were curious now. The boredom was gone, replaced by a need to see who had just unleashed that kind of power. They turned the corner and ran straight into me. Tang Chi stopped, looking startled. She didn't expect to see me still hanging around. Heading home, she asked, her voice softening slightly. Training's done, I said, keeping my voice steady. I want to get some rest before tomorrow. Good idea. Good luck with the 5-subject exam, she said. She clearly thought I was being reckless by taking the combat portion, but she was still my cousin. Just stay safe, okay? Thanks, Chi. You too, I said. I gave her a bright, confident smile and walked past them. I didn't look back. I knew exactly where they were going. It didn't take them long to find the room I had just vacated. When they stepped inside, they froze. The wall was a disaster zone, shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. The memory metal at the center hadn't just dented, it had melted. My God, the guy in the white tracksuit breathed. Look at the damage. How much force does it take to do this? The boy with the earrings stepped closer to the smoking crater. The residual energy is violent. Whoever did this, if they aren't a rank 2 warrior, they're at the absolute peak of rank 1. A rank 2 student in our city? Xiaoya asked, her voice trembling. That's impossible. Not even the geniuses in the capital are that strong yet. Tang Chi shook her head, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't a student. Some professional warrior must have ignored the rules and used the high school floor for testing. Yeah, that has to be it. The others agreed, looking relieved. The idea of a peer being that powerful was too much to handle. It would make them look like children. Wait, Xiaoya said, her eyes widening. We only saw Jingming coming from this direction. You don't think, maybe he's been hiding his strength? Like a protagonist in a novel? The earring guy laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. You've been reading too many web novels, Xiaoya. Hide his strength? He's a grade E. A grade E hitting 300 units is a miracle. This is thousands. Physics doesn't work that way. Xiaoya nodded, embarrassed. That was a stupid thought. Tang Chi stood there staring at the ruined wall. For a second, she pictured my face as I walked away. I had looked so calm, so sure of myself. A small seed of doubt planted itself in her mind, but she quickly pushed it down. The next morning, the sun rose on the most important day of my life. The academic exams were held at the schools, but the combat exam was different. It took place at the military zone on the outskirts of the city. I woke up early and geared up. I slid into my L-grade black combat suit, the reinforced beast hide fabric hugging my frame. I laced up my tactical boots and strapped my 2-meter obsidian spear to my back. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like the weak, struggling student everyone knew. I looked like a hunter. Time to go, I whispered. Across town in the luxury villa district, Tang Chi was also preparing. She checked her twin daggers, her movements fluid and graceful. She was a B-grade awakened, possessing the Shadow Cat ability. Her speed and reflexes were far beyond a normal human's. As she headed for the door, her mother stopped her. Chi, you and Jingming are at the same testing site, right? Mom, there's only one combat site in the whole city. Of course we are, Tang Chi sighed. Tang Chi adjusted her light armor, her expression turning cold. If I find him, I'll do what I can. But in that zone, it's every man for himself. If he's as weak as I think he is, he won't last long enough for me to find him. If you run into Jingming in the exam zone, try to help him, Tang Chi's mother said, her eyes full of worry. He only has an E-grade ability. I just want him to be safe. Even if his grades are bad, tell him not to pick fights with high-level beasts. Tang Chi wanted to tell her mother the truth. The exam map was massive. The chances of actually running into me were almost zero. But seeing the look on her mother's face, she just nodded. I know, Mom, she said. She checked her gear one last time, stepped into the waiting luxury car, and headed for the city gymnasium. Jiangxing had 3 high schools. Out of the 3,000 graduating students, about 1,400 had signed up for the combat exam. The city had mobilized 40 buses to transport us to the military zone. They were lined up neatly outside the gymnasium, organized by school and class. The scene outside the buses was chaotic. Some students were alone, but many were surrounded by their parents. Son, I don't care about your grades, I heard one father say. Just stay safe. Daughter, watch your back out there. A mother whispered, clutching her child's hand. I watched them from a distance as I arrived. Being an orphan in my past life, I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. I had hoped for parents in this life, too, but I was still alone. I took a deep breath, pushed those feelings down, and scanned the crowd. I found the bus for Jiangxing's second high school, Class 5, and stepped inside. The moment I walked in, the chatter died down. Wait, is that Su Jingming? Someone whispered. I never noticed it before, but he looks actually handsome in a combat suit. Look at his eyes. Since when did he look so sharp? The old me had been the invisible kid of Class 5. I was introverted and shy. If I missed a day of school, nobody noticed except for the teacher and my best friend, Zhang Hao. But now, everything was different. I stood 6'1", my posture was perfect, and my gaze was clear and focused. I saw a few girls in the back rows staring at me, their expressions a mix of surprise and interest. My homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, looked up from his clipboard and smiled. He checked my name off the list without a word. Once the last student arrived, he stood up. Everyone's here, Chun Fan announced. Let's move out. The city was silent as we drove. For the past month, the government had enforced strict noise control to let students rest. Some high-end neighborhoods even hired Soundwave Awakened to block out the noise of the world. Today, the protection was even tighter. The roads were cleared, and armed soldiers and awakened squads patrolled every intersection. Our convoy of 40 buses cruised through the empty streets and straight into the military zone on the outskirts of the city. We piled out of the buses onto a massive concrete clearing. Soldiers stood every 3 meters, rifles held tight, their faces frozen in stern expressions. Nobody dared to make a scene. At the front was a temporary stage, and behind that, a massive area enclosed by high wire fences. It was a ruined town. The wreckage of buildings stretched further than the eye could see. Inside those ruins, I could see dark shadows moving. The low growls and roars of beasts drifted through the air. That's the testing ground, someone gulped. Holy crap, is that a one-horned lizard? Another student shouted, pointing. No way. Is the exam really going to be that brutal this year? This place used to be Weiyuan Town. Decades ago, it was overrun by beasts and turned into a wasteland. The military eventually took it back, but instead of rebuilding, they turned it into a training ground. For the combat exam, the provincial examiners chose specific beasts to ensure the difficulty was the same for everyone in the province. Usually, the outskirts only had common beasts like shadow cats or iron-haired pigs. But if one-horned lizards and earthblade tigers were appearing near the fences, it meant the difficulty had spiked. The risk of dying was real. A few students turned pale, their confidence crumbling instantly. If you can't handle a beast like that, you'll never survive a real university, let alone become a warrior. I looked toward the voice. It was a young man in a pale green combat suit, holding a long sword like an ancient swordsman. He had the eyes of a hawk, piercing and full of pressure. A few students looked ready to argue, but as soon as they saw his face, they shut their mouths and looked away. I nudged the tall guy standing next to me. His name was Lu Jia. He had a C-grade gigantification ability and was one of the few people I actually got along with. Who's the guy with the big mouth? I asked. Lu Jia groaned. Who else? That's Zhou Mingyang, the breeze swordsman from First High School. I nodded. First High was the elite school in the city. They didn't just have teachers. They had actual professional warriors giving lectures. First High School was a breeding ground for monsters. They didn't just study. They had regular live combat drills with deadly beasts. Their students were aggressive, battle-hardened, and elite. In fact, nearly 30% of all exam candidates in the entire city came from that one school. Zhou Mingyang was their crown jewel. He possessed a B-grade wind element ability called Breeze Gale. When he activated it, he didn't just conjure wind blades. He could literally decrease air resistance around his body. It made his movement and attack speed terrifyingly fast. In Jiang City, that ability was considered top tier. But that wasn't the scary part. Zhou Mingyang was one of the few students who had already broken through the awakened stage to become a true rank 1 Esper before the exam even started. People already called him the Breeze Swordsman. He was the favorite to take the top spot in the province. With a reputation like that, no ordinary student dared to cross him. Good. The principal of First High whispered from the sidelines, nodding with pride. A swordsman needs that kind of unstoppable momentum. Soon, all the students from the 40-plus buses gathered in the clearing. We stood in neat rows by school and class, with our teachers standing guard at the front. A man in a military uniform stepped onto the makeshift stage. He was tall, rugged, with a long, jagged scar running down the right side of his face. He didn't say a word. He just scanned the crowd. The instant his eyes swept over us, the whispering stopped. If Zhou Mingyang's gaze felt like pressure, this man's gaze felt like a predator looking at prey. My heart skipped a beat. This guy was definitely a rank 2 Esper or higher. I am Wang Haiyang, the chief commander for the Jiang City Combat Exam, he announced. His voice wasn't amplified by a microphone, yet it rang clearly in everyone's ears. Before we begin, I will reiterate the rules. The exam starts at 9 a.m. sharp and ends at 9 p.m. You have 12 hours. He pointed toward the ruins behind him. The wasteland is divided into 3 zones: the outskirts, the mid-zone, and the core. The outskirts contain unranked beasts. The mid-zone has peak unranked and rank 1 beasts. The core is strictly rank 1 and above. At the very center, you will find high-tier rank 1s and even rank 2 beasts. It was exactly like a math test. The different zones represented different difficulty levels. The deepest part of the core was the final bonus question, reserved only for the geniuses. I felt a smirk tugging at my lips. If this were a few weeks ago, I would have stayed in the outskirts, praying not to get bitten. Now, I wasn't just planning on entering the core. I wanted to see what was waiting in the very center. Different beasts grant different points, Wang Haiyang continued. The higher the rank, the higher the score. But know your limits. Don't throw your lives away. Now, receive your supplies. A fleet of trucks rolled up, and soldiers began distributing black tactical backpacks. Inside each bag were 3 items. First, a smartwatch to track kills, calculate scores, and show our GPS coordinates on a map. Second, 3 compressed energy bars for quick stamina recovery. The third item was the most important, a safety ball. However, using it meant an immediate forfeit. Your exam would be over. I strapped the watch to my wrist, tucked the energy bars into my pack, and clipped the safety ball to my belt. I needed it within reach. In this place, life and death happened in a heartbeat. Sometimes, you didn't even have time to press a button. It's 8:40 a.m., Wang Haiyang shouted as he stepped down. You have 20 minutes. The tension broke, replaced by frantic shouting. Does anyone need a tank? I have a D-grade fortification ability. Mental type C-grade here. I can stun beasts for a few seconds. Any teams? We need a high damage dealer. D-grade or higher only. The exam allowed teaming up, but there was a catch. Points were split among all members. Usually, the top students went solo to maximize their scores. But after seeing those high-level beasts near the fence, everyone was reconsidering. Even the cocky ones were looking for backup. Su Jingming, you haven't joined a team yet, right? I turned around. A girl in a sleek, silver combat suit was walking toward me. It was Lin Qingyuan, the class monitor of Class 5. She was pretty, popular, and notoriously kind-hearted. Ever since she found out my parents had passed away, she'd been looking out for me in her own quiet way. The old Su Jingming thought she had a crush on him because of it, but I knew better. She was just a good person to a fault. She smiled at me, her eyes soft. Why don't you join us? We need a support attacker, and your lightning ability would be perfect to fill the gap. I winced internally. This exam was a life-or-death struggle. Nobody wanted a burden on their team. I looked past her and saw her teammates. Their faces told me everything I needed to know. They weren't happy about this invitation at all. The other members of Lin Qingyuan's team looked like they had swallowed charcoal. Their faces were dark and tight with frustration. "Monitor, I'm planning to take the exam solo," I said, shaking my head. "You guys should go ahead and stick together." I couldn't help but feel a bit touched by her naivety. Lin Qingyuan was genuinely kind, a rarity in this world. Her family must have protected her well to keep her heart so pure in such a brutal environment. "Is that so?" she asked, her voice trailing off. "Well, all right then. Just stay safe once you're inside." She looked like she wanted to argue, but when she saw the resolve in my eyes, she knew it was pointless. She gave a heavy sigh and turned away, looking disappointed. "At least the kid knows his place," one of her teammates muttered, letting out a visible breath of relief. Lin Qingyuan was the leader, so they couldn't have openly defied her, but they were terrified of the dead weight. If a grade E like me joined, their collective score would have plummeted. Once she was out of earshot, Lu Jie leaned in with a greasy smirk. "Rejecting an invite from the class beauty? Damn, Ming, you've got guts. Most guys would kill for that chance." "You know how she is," I said, rolling my eyes. "She just has a soft spot for the weak." "Oh, so you do know," Lu Jie joked, pretending to be shocked. "I thought you actually thought she was in love with you. But seriously, are you really going in alone? This year's exam is brutal. A grade E soloing this. It's going to be ugly. Look, if you call me Big Brother, I might just be persuaded to carry you through." He flipped his hair back with a flourish. Lu Jie used to be quiet, just like the old Su Jingming, but ever since he awakened to C-grade ability, he'd become incredibly full of himself. Even though he sounded like a jerk, I knew he was just worried about me. He was a good friend. I wasn't about to let him win that easily, though. "Me? Need a carry from you." I let out a dramatic, exaggerated laugh. "Let me tell you the truth. I'm not the man I used to be. I'm aiming for the top spot in the entire Jiangnan province. Now, if you call me daddy, I might consider dragging you into the top 100. I mimicked his hair flip perfectly. That was just how guys were, always competing to see who could be the other's father. "Top of the province? Man, you can really talk," Lu Jie said, his eyes wide. "I never knew you were such a joker. If Zhang Hao were here, he'd laugh his teeth off." "Nobody believes the truth these days," I sighed, shaking my head in mock sadness. The world is truly going downhill. We kept trading insults until the clock struck 9. Clang. The heavy gates leading to the ruined town creaked open. Wang Haiyang stood on the podium, his voice booming across the plaza. "The 2030 Jiangxing Martial Arts exam officially begins. Candidates, enter the field." The moment he finished, over 1,400 students surged forward. It was like a tidal wave of steel and ambition. Everyone was fueled by hope, dreaming of getting into the Jiangnan Ability University. I gripped my spear, felt the weight of my combat suit, and blended into the crowd. The ruined town felt like a giant mouth waiting to swallow us whole. As the students disappeared into the debris, the open plaza became eerily empty. "Activate the cameras and drones," a voice commanded. "Start the live broadcast." In this country, the martial arts exam was a national event. It wasn't just for the examiners. It was broadcast to every school, every parent, and every younger student watching from their classrooms. The town was massive. Once we cleared the entrance, the crowd thinned out instantly. I felt like a single drop of water falling into the ocean. The beasts here were smart, too. They didn't attack immediately. They were hiding, waiting for us to wander into their territory. I saw Zhou Mingyang, the top student from high school number 1, activate his wind ability. He blurred past the ruins like a cheetah, his blade gleaming. I chose a different direction and started walking, tapping the smartwatch on my wrist. A blue holographic screen projected into the air. "Please authenticate identity." Technology in this world was far more advanced than my old life. I pressed my thumb against the glass. A leaderboard popped up in the corner. Zhou Mingyang was already at the top with 7 points. Li Yuan was second with 5. I was sitting at rank 874 with a big, Fat Zero. Number 1 high school doesn't waste time, I muttered. I opened the map. It was a series of concentric circles. The outer rim was green, the middle was yellow, the core was red, and the very center was a deep, dark crimson. I was currently a tiny white dot on the very edge of the green zone. Let's head straight for the red, I decided, adjusting my grip. I hadn't gone far when something blocked my path. It was a beast the size of a leopard, covered in fur as black as ink. Its eyes were a pale, glowing orange. If you ignored the serrated fangs and the dried blood staining its razor-sharp claws, it would have been a beautiful creature. My first beast. I tightened my hold on the obsidian spear. It was time to see what S-grade lightning could really do. A shadow cat. I recognized it immediately. Back at school, I'd spend hours memorizing the monster encyclopedia. These things were common in the wilderness, but common didn't mean easy. They were fast, agile, and had a bite force of over 1,000 kilograms. Plenty of students had failed the exam because they underestimated a shadow cat. The beast let out a bloodthirsty growl. It dug its claws into the cracked pavement and charged. The scent of my flesh clearly triggered its predatory instincts, because its speed increased with every stride. Usually, a student facing their first real monster would panic. Their movements would get clumsy, and their mind would go blank. But as I watched the shadow cat close the distance, I felt strangely calm. It reached the 3-meter mark and leaped. It arched its back in midair, unsheathing alloy-hard claws aimed straight for my skull. If that hit connected, my head would pop like a ripe watermelon. The creature's face actually twisted into a human-like expression of excitement, as if it could already taste the kill. Then, a black blur flashed through the air. My obsidian spear moved faster than the cat could react. The sharp tip drove straight through its throat, pinning the beast in midair for a fraction of a second. A fountain of crimson blood sprayed from its severed artery, coating the ruins. Kill confirmed. Unranked shadow cat. Ability points +3. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Most people were paralyzed by the ferocious aura monsters gave off. It was like standing in front of a professional killer. One look could make a normal person's heart stop. That was why rich kids hired bodyguards to take them into the wild before the exam, to get used to the fear. I didn't have that luxury. I'd worried I might freeze up, but I felt nothing. No fear. No hesitation. I could calculate the cat's trajectory with perfect precision. Maybe I was just a natural. I jerked my right hand back. The obsidian spear slid out of the neck with a wet thud, and the shadow cat's limp body hit the dirt, kicking up a cloud of dust. The cat had made a fatal mistake by jumping. Against a sword or a knife, that leap might have worked. But my spear was over 2 meters long. I had the reach. It died before it ever got close enough to scratch me. I looked at the system panel. 3 points was small, but it was a start. If I gathered enough points, I could grow even stronger during the exam itself. The outer zone is a waste of time, I whispered. Monsters were ranked from level 1 to level 9. Anything below that was unranked, meant for basic students. I originally planned to stay on the outskirts to practice, but since the aura didn't affect me, there was no point in lingering. I gripped my spear and started sprinting toward the middle zone. I wasn't as fast as Zhou Mingyang with his wind powers, but I kept a steady pace, killing everything that crossed my path. Asterisk kill confirmed. Unranked iron-spurred pig. Ability points +5. Asterisk. Asterisk kill confirmed. Unranked shadow cat. Ability points +3. Asterisk. Asterisk kill confirmed. Unranked horned lizard. Ability points +6. Asterisk. I didn't use my S-grade lightning. Not yet. For one, using the purple dawn lightning on these weaklings would be overkill. I wanted to sharpen my spear techniques through actual combat. Secondly, high-grade abilities drained energy fast. My old E-grade spark could last 3 hours, but this S-grade power might drain me in less than 1. The exam lasted 12 hours. I had to save my trump card for the high-level monsters in the core. With every kill, I felt my senses sharpening. My movements became more fluid. The spear felt less like a tool and more like an extension of my arm. I was reaching a state of flow I'd never experienced in the dojo. Was my spear technique evolving on its own? I stopped in a narrow, ruined alley. At my feet lay a massive carcass, the size of a small car. It had dark brown skin and a horn as sharp as a blade. Even in death, the creature radiated a suffocating, violent energy. This was the one creature every student dreaded facing. A one-horned lizard. The beast lay there, covered in deep, jagged gashes, but the killing blow was the most brutal. I had driven the tip of my obsidian spear straight through its eye socket and into its brain. The internal nerves were shredded. It was dead, beyond any doubt. I gripped the shaft and yanked the spear out with a wet, squelching sound. Red and white fluids clung to the blade. A normal student would have vomited at the sight, but I didn't even blink. Instead, I calmly opened my system panel to check my progress. My name was Su Jingming. My ability was S-grade Purple Dawn Lightning, but my eyes went straight to my stats. My physical constitution was at level 141, and my mental strength was at 160. Then I saw it. Under my skills, my spear technique had jumped to intermediate. I felt a surge of excitement. Real combat really was the best teacher. The original owner of this body had practiced spear techniques for 6 years and never made it past basic. I had only been fighting monsters for a few hours, and I had already broken through. It wasn't just my talent. It was the sheer intensity of life and death stakes. If intermediate felt this fluid, I wondered what the next level would be like. I looked at my accumulated ability points, 213. I hadn't been counting, but I'd already killed over 40 monsters. Most were low-level shadow cats, but there were also tougher ones like blade tigers and these one-horned lizards. 213 points was a massive haul. It was enough to upgrade. The temptation was too much. I focused on the plus sign next to my spear technique and clicked. Suddenly, a flood of knowledge crashed into my mind. It wasn't like watching a movie that I would eventually forget. It felt like I had spent decades in a training hall, repeating every thrust, parry, and strike millions of times. The muscle memory settled deep into my bones. I gripped the obsidian spear and lunged. In a single second, the spear blurred. I struck 4 times in rapid succession, the black metal looking like a streak of dark lightning. I wasn't just fast, I was dangerous. When I finally stopped, the friction from the air was so intense that the spearhead was glowing with heat, steam rising from the tip. I used to think physical stats were everything, but I was wrong. With high-level spear technique, my speed had doubled. Even if a monster was physically stronger than me, I could dance around it and pick it apart. The upgrade cost me 200 points, leaving me with only 13. I wished I had enough to see what master level felt like, but I knew I'd get there soon. I checked the map. My white dot was right on the edge of the green outer zone. In 30 minutes, I'd be in the yellow middle zone. That's where the peak unranked and rank 1 monsters lived. That was where the real harvest would begin. I was standing in what used to be a residential district of Weiyuan Town. The 6-story buildings were mostly rubble now, overgrown with weeds and weathered by time. It was a ghost town. As I turned to leave, I saw a group of 5 students approaching from the end of the road. 3 girls and 2 boys. At the front was a tall girl in a sleek, silver-white combat suit that highlighted her athletic build. It was Lin Qingyuan, the class monitor who had invited me to join her team earlier. Su Jingming, she called out, her eyes widening in surprise. She hurried toward me, her long legs moving with purpose. Monitor, I said, offering a small smile. She was the first person from my class I'd run into. I can't believe I ran into you here, she said, looking around the empty alley. Are you alone? Her teammates looked just as shocked. Most students with E-grade abilities were usually eliminated in the first hour. It was already noon, 3 hours into the exam, and I was not only fine, but I had pushed deep into the outskirts. It's easier to move alone, I replied simply. Impressive, she said, giving me a genuine thumbs up. We only made it this far because of Xiao Qiao. She pointed to a petite girl behind her who blushed. Xiao Qiao had a D-grade support ability that boosted the team's movement speed. I just got lucky, I lied smoothly. The monsters I ran into weren't that strong. It felt good to see a friendly face in this hellhole, especially one as pretty as hers, but I didn't want to linger. I had a schedule to keep. Time is tight, monitor, I said, nodding to the group. Let's talk after the exam. Go ahead, she smiled. Good luck. I hope you get a great score. Lin Qingyuan knew time was of the essence during the combat exam. She didn't try to stop me. I could tell she was stunned I'd made it this far on my own. To her, I was just a tragic figure, an orphan with a weak E-grade ability who was likely to die in this wasteland. Seeing me alive, Enro clearly brought her a sense of relief. Suddenly, a sharp cry from one of her teammates broke the silence. "Captain, come look at this." The group huddled around the massive carcass of a one-horned lizard. The blood was still wet, dripping onto the cracked pavement. "The blood hasn't dried yet," one boy noted, his voice trembling slightly. "This thing died within the last few minutes." "Look at the wounds," another added, pointing to the lizard's head. "There are several gashes, but the killing blow was a single puncture straight through the skull. It looks like a piercing wound from a long-range melee weapon. Maybe a spear." Lin Qingyuan's team had seen the body from a distance, but assumed a high-ranking squad had cleared the area earlier. Up close, the truth was terrifying. The kill was fresh, and it was surgical. "You're not suggesting Su Jingming did this, are you?" one of the boys asked, his expression twisting into disbelief. The one-horned lizard was a nightmare for most students. Their team of 5 only dared to hunt one because they had the numbers to back it up. The idea of a lone student with a grade E ability taking one down solo was offensive to their common sense. "Let's just check the rankings," the boy muttered, tapping his smartwatch. He scrolled through the live leaderboard, searching for my name. When he found it, he froze. His eyes bulged. Rank 46. Su Jingming. 256 points. Jiangxing Second High School. What? 46th? He rubbed his eyes so hard I thought he'd bruise them. I've got to be seeing things. He broke into the top 50. The rest of the team crowded around the holographic screen. The air went cold. Even Lin Qingyuan, usually so composed, stared at the display with a blank, dazed expression. The same question burned in all of their minds. How could a grade E awakener be this much of a monster? Meanwhile, outside the ruins of the wasteland town, the atmosphere was electric. 10 massive projection screens hovered over the military clearing, showing live feeds from drones tracking the top 10 candidates. Below them, thousands of smaller screens flickered with footage from fixed cameras scattered throughout the zone. A leaderboard sat prominently to the side, detailing every kill and every point earned. Liu Hang, the principal of Jiangxing First High School, was the man of the hour. 9 out of the top 10 students were from his school. "Zhou Mingyang is our ace," Zhang Wenshan, the director of the Education Bureau, said with a satisfied nod. He watched the first screen where a boy was tearing through monsters with ease. Principal Liu sighed, feeling the weight of the moment. "Your school is doing excellent work," Zhang Wenshan said, turning his gaze toward the other principals. "Third High is doing all right too, finally getting someone into the top 10. But Second High, your best student is only at rank 18. Zhao Yao, the principal of Second High, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Usually, his school outperformed Third High, but this year the tables had turned. He scanned the top 50 list, looking for any sign of hope. He saw the usual names, Li Ming, Yang Jian, Tang Qi, but then his eyes stopped on a name he didn't recognize. "Su Jingming? Who is that?" Zhao Yao muttered. "I've never heard of this kid." He figured it was just a student from a general class who had been hiding their strength. It happened sometimes. He didn't think much of it, assuming the boy would drop off soon. But in the back row of the seating area, Chen Fan, my homeroom teacher, was having a mental breakdown. He knew exactly who I was. He knew I only had a grade E ability. How is he in the top 50? Chen Fan whispered to himself, his face pale. Did he hide his strength? No, that's impossible. A grade E ability is a grade E ability. It doesn't just turn into an S grade overnight. He stared at the screen, searching for an explanation. The combat exam was a brutal, honest test of survival. There were no shortcuts, and there was no luck that could carry a weakling into the top 50. Something was very, very wrong. The main screen only displayed the top 10 rankings. Below it, thousands of smaller camera feeds flickered, so tiny and numerous they were a blur. My homeroom teacher, Chen Fan, desperately scanned the monitors for my face. He was dying to know how I was pulling this off. He was like a cat smelling a treat, but unable to find the bowl, his curiosity eating him alive. I didn't know about his frustration. I had spent the last half hour sprinting through the ruins of the town, finally crossing into the central zone. The atmosphere changed instantly. The roars of beasts were louder here, more frequent. The air felt thick with the smell of blood and raw aggression. My combat boots crunched down on an old plastic basin. After decades of exposure to the elements, the plastic was as brittle as dry noodles. It shattered into dust under my weight. I walked calmly, a nutrition bar clamped between my teeth, my eyes scanning the skeletal remains of the city. Before the beasts overran it, this place had a population of 100,000. When the lines fell, half of them didn't make it out. In the outskirts, nature had reclaimed the land, but here in the city center, the scars of the massacre remained. I saw rusted cars abandoned in the middle of the road, dark red bloodstains baked into the concrete, and the occasional human bone that hadn't yet turned to dust. This was the reality of the Great Xia's combat exam. It wasn't just a test of strength. It was a wake-up call. The government protected its citizens so well that most people lived their entire lives without ever seeing a beast in person. But for us, the awakened, the peace ended here. We had to see the brutality early. We had to know what we were fighting. A low growl vibrated through the air. A beast lunged from the ruins. It looked like a tiger, but it was massive, with mottled yellow and green fur. Most striking were the bone blades growing from its forearms. They were organic, yet they gleamed with a cold, metallic luster. Behind it, a whip-like tail lashed the ground. It was a blade tiger. I narrowed my eyes. These were common, but their strength was easy to gauge by the length of those arm blades. Anything under 20 centimeters was unranked. This one had blades at least 22 centimeters long. It was a rank 1 beast. Compared to the trash I'd fought in the outskirts, this thing had presence. Its amber eyes were filled with a murderous, bloodthirsty hunger. Lucky me, I muttered, swallowing the last of my nutrition bar. I felt the energy hit my stomach. First thing I run into in the central zone is a rank 1. I tossed the empty wrapper aside. I didn't retreat. I gripped my obsidian spear and charged. The tip of the spear dragged against the cracked pavement, sending a shower of sparks flying with a screeching metallic ring. The blade tiger had a spark of intelligence. Seeing a weak-looking human dare to initiate an attack, it let out a furious roar and charged like a heavy tank. Its sheer mass alone would have terrified most students, even without the bone blades and the fangs. I didn't blink. I didn't feel a hint of panic. My chi and blood value was already at 140, far beyond my peers, and my spear technique had reached the advanced level. My speed was on another level now. As we closed the gap, I swung the trailing spear upward in a massive arc. It moved like a bolt of lightning. A sickening squelch echoed through the street. The tiger couldn't even react. My spear tore a hole the size of a bowl right into its belly. The wound was deep, ripping through hide and muscle. I could see its organs pulsing behind the flow of dark blood. Normally, a wound like that would end a fight. But this was a rank 1 beast. It roared in pain, its ferocity doubling as it threw itself at me in a desperate frenzy. Tougher than I thought, I noted. I hadn't used my lightning ability yet, and I didn't expect a single physical strike to kill it instantly. I danced back, the obsidian spear becoming an extension of my arms. With my advanced technique, the spear moved like a swimming dragon. I kept the beast at the perfect distance. Every time I thrust, I left a new hole in its body. Because of my reach, the tiger couldn't even touch my clothes. In less than a minute, it was over. This beast, which could have easily slaughtered 99% of the candidates in this exam, collapsed into the dust. Its body was a sieve of puncture wounds. I stood over it, completely unharmed. There wasn't even a drop of blood on my combat suit. This was the beauty of the spear. If your opponent wasn't fast enough to close the gap, they just died slowly, unable to even scratch you. A notification chimed in my head. Asterisk rank 1 blade tiger killed. 10 energy points added. Asterisk. My eyes lit up. Killing a rank 1 gave me double the points of an unranked beast. I need to move faster, I whispered. I slung the spear behind my back and took off toward the sound of the heaviest fighting. The ruins were divided into 4 zones: outskirts, central, core, and the inner core. Most students were stuck in the outskirts. Only the elite dared the central zone. The core was reserved for the geniuses of the top high schools. As for the inner core, that place held rank 2 beasts. In the history of our city, Almost no one had ever set foot there during an exam. That was exactly where I was going. The core zone was where the geniuses from the elite high schools gathered. With my S-grade Purple Dawn Lightning, I definitely had the right to be there. But there was a catch. My lightning ability consumed a massive amount of energy, and I couldn't keep it active forever. I decided to stay in the central zone for now, grinding for points, and save the core for the final 2 hours of the exam. In the real wilderness, there are no neat boundaries or safety zones. You can be walking along, and suddenly a high-level beast jumps out to turn you into a snack. I knew this was my only chance to harvest a massive amount of energy points, so I didn't waste a second. After killing the Blade Tiger, I went on the hunt. I didn't even need my lightning. My raw physical strength and advanced spear techniques were more than enough for these lower-tier monsters. I fell into a lethal rhythm. Find a beast, kill it, get the points. Repeat. Find, kill points. As I fought, I noticed a pattern. The points weren't just about the beast's rank. They were about their actual combat strength. For example, a shadow cat and a horned lizard were both technically the same rank, but one horned lizard could easily take down 3 or 4 cats. Because of that, killing a peak unranked horned lizard gave me as many points as a rank 1 shadow cat. It didn't change my strategy, though. I just kept killing everything in my path. I never stopped. I was either fighting or looking for the next thing to fight. As my kill count rose, the energy points on my system panel skyrocketed, and my official exam score began to climb at a terrifying rate. I had no idea what kind of stir I was causing in the outside world. The combat exam lasted 12 hours. During that time, every principal and homeroom teacher stayed on site at the military base. The Bureau of Education director was there, so nobody dared to leave early. Besides, the rankings determined how much funding each school would receive for the next year. It was 1 p.m., 4 hours into the test. Most students were already cracking open their first energy bars to keep their strength up. The teachers were walking back to the spectator stands after finishing their lunch at the military canteen. First high school is as dominant as ever, one teacher remarked, looking at the leaderboard. Almost the entire top 10 belongs to them. Well, they get the most funding and the best students. It's not a surprise, another replied. But our second high school is doing okay. We've got 8 students in the top 50. Usually, we only have 5. True, but third high school is the real surprise this year. They've managed to break into the top 10. It's embarrassing for us. A group of teachers from second high school chatted as they walked. Among them was Sun Yang, the teacher in charge of the elite rocket class, where all the top prospects were grouped. Suddenly, a teacher turned to him. Hey, Mr. Sun, what's the deal with Su Jingming? I've never heard of this kid before. Which class is he in? Sun Yang looked genuinely confused. Su Jingming isn't in my class. I was actually about to ask you guys which class he belonged to. The other teachers froze. He's not in the rocket class? Then who else could be performing this well? In every high school, once students awakened their abilities, they were reshuffled. The ones with high potential grades were put into the rocket class. It was unheard of for a student from a regular, parallel class to make a dent in the rankings. At the back of the group, a bearded man named Li Jun nudged Chen Fan, the teacher of Class 5. Hey, old Chen, how's your class doing? My best student just broke into the top 100. For a regular class, that's top tier, right? Li Jun had a smug look on his face. He and Chen Fan had been rivals for years, constantly trying to one-up each other. Chen Fan glanced at him, his expression neutral. That's nice, but I think you're going to be disappointed. One of my students just broke into the top 50. Top 50? Li Jun scoffed. Old Chen, stop joking. The top 50 is reserved for the rocket class kids. There's no way one of yours is up there. He paused, his eyes widening as the realization hit him. Wait, are you saying Su Jingming is in your class? Chen Fan simply nodded. If he's your student, why didn't you say anything when everyone was asking? Li Jun shouted, his face turning red. Oh, Chen Fan said, acting oblivious. I guess I just didn't hear them. Li Jun felt like he was going to explode. He knew Chen Fan was doing this on purpose, acting calm just to rub it in. He's only in the top 50, Chen Fan added, twisting the knife. It's not a big deal. The top student in the rocket class is already ranked 18th. Li Jun wanted to scream. Only the top 50? The bonus for a teacher with a student in the top 50 was over 20,000 yuan. In a small city where a teacher's monthly salary was barely 6,000, that was a fortune. Li Jun's best student ever had only reached 64th place. Li Jun took several deep breaths to steady himself. "It seems you've raised quite a remarkable student, Mr. Chun," he said, his voice dripping with bitterness. "He's all right," Chun Fan replied smoothly. "It's all thanks to Jingming's own hard work. It didn't have much to do with me. I watched as my homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, tried to keep a straight face. He acted humble, but I knew he was laughing his head off inside. For years, Li Jun had been lording his students' successes over him, but now the tables had turned. The sting of defeat was visible on Li Jun's face, and Chun Fan was soaking in every second of it. "Su Jingming is from class 5? One of the other teachers whispered, clearly impressed. "Mr. Chun, you really know how to teach. Out of all the parallel classes, yours is the only one with a student in the top 50. Even Sun Yang, the head of the elite rocket class, gave Chun Fan a friendly nod. Everyone knew the rocket class got first pick of the best students. For a regular teacher like Chun Fan to produce a top-tier talent from the leftovers was a massive achievement. The group of teachers chatted and laughed as they made their way back to the spectator stands. As soon as Chun Fan sat down, he ignored the chatter and glued his eyes to the massive virtual screen floating in the air. He was scanning for my name. He found it quickly. Asterisk rank 32. Su Jingming. 328 points. Jiangqing Second High School. Asterisk. A grin spread across his face. Rank 32? He muttered to himself. He was confused. I had been ranked 46th just before he went to grab lunch. How did I jump 14 spots in such a short time? Before he could even process the change, the list flickered. My name vaulted upward again, landing in a new position. Rank 25. Su Jingming. 372 points. Jiangqing Second High School. Chun Fan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He stared at the screen, stunned. What is going on? How is he moving this fast? In a massive exam like the Jiangqing Martial Arts Gaokao, there were over 1,400 students competing. Ranks shifted constantly, but big jumps usually happened at the bottom of the list where everyone's scores were close. In the top 50, the gap between students was usually huge. Moving up 1 or 2 spots was hard enough. Jumping 10 or 15 ranks at once was unheard of. Chun Fan wasn't the only one who noticed. The other teachers from my school started pointing at the screen, their voices rising in shock. Look, Su Jingming moved again. He's at 25 now. Is this for real? We just want to eat, and he's already climbed this much? Is he really from a parallel class? This kid is a beast. Right now, my school had 9 students in the top 50. I was currently the 3rd highest ranked student in the entire school, sitting just behind the 2 stars in 18th and 22nd place. My score had jumped from 328 to 372 in a heartbeat. At the front of the stands, Principal Zhao Yao narrowed his eyes. As a rank 1 spirit type awakened, he had a memory like a steel trap. He had been tracking every student from second high, and my sudden surge felt impossible. The math for the exam was simple. Killing a peak unranked beast gave you 6 to 8 points. An E-rank beast gave you 14 to 16. The scores only updated every 4 seconds. For my score to jump 44 points in one update meant I had killed 5 peak unranked beasts or 3 E-rank beasts in under 4 seconds. No matter how I did it, it proved one thing. I was incredibly powerful. Even if I wasn't at the level of the absolute top geniuses yet, I definitely had the strength of a top 10 contender. Where did we get such a fierce student? Principal Zhao muttered, looking completely lost. Beside him, the director of the Education Bureau, Zhang Wansan, nodded in approval. Principal Zhao, it seems your school was hiding a dark horse. This Su Jingming must have been holding back earlier. Now that he's trying, he's flying up the board. He has the strength of a top 10 finisher, added Lu Hang, the principal of First High School. By the way, what's his ability? I've never heard of him before. Zhang Wansan looked curious. A student this strong shouldn't have been a nobody. To be honest, Principal Zhao admitted, he only just exploded onto the scene today. I'll have to ask his teacher for the details. Mr. Chun, come over here for a moment. Under the envious stares of the other teachers, Chun Fan walked over to the VIP section. To a regular teacher, the principal and the director were legendary figures. He looked a bit stiff as he stood before them. Principal, director, Chen Fan said, his voice slightly tight. From what I know, Su Jingming is an E-rank awakened. His ability is weak current. Principal Zhao frowned. E-rank? Are you sure you haven't misremembered, Mr. Chen? I'm certain, sir. I even warned him not to take the combat exam because of it, Chen Fan said with a bitter smile. Even he was starting to wonder if the original awakening test had been a mistake. Director Zhang Wansen looked thoughtful. E-rank, and yet he's doing this? He must have incredible talent in other areas. It's a shame he's not in the top 10 yet. The system won't let us see his live feed. The broadcast system followed strict provincial rules. It only showed the top 10 students to the public. Finding one student among thousands of fixed cameras was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Just wait, Zhang Wansen said, showing the patience of a man in his position. With this kind of momentum, he'll be in the top 10 very soon. Principal Zhao nodded and gestured for Chen Fan to stay. Mr. Chen, why don't you sit here with us? Chen Fan beamed. Not many teachers got the chance to sit with the big bosses. As time ticked by, the rankings continued to shuffle. But one name stayed on a relentless upward trajectory. Rank 25, Su Jingming. Rank 21, Su Jingming. Rank 16, Su Jingming. Rank 12, Su Jingming. Then, the screen flickered one last time. Rank 9, Su Jingming. It took less than an hour for the rankings to shift. My name shot upward, cutting through the list of thousands until I broke into the top 10. I had actually done it. Back at the observation center, my homeroom teacher, Chen Fan, was shaking with excitement. He was just a teacher for a standard parallel class. He never dreamed one of his students would break into the top 10 in Jiangxing. Principal Zhao Yao of High School Number 2 finally let out a long breath of relief. For years, High School Number 3 had looked down on us, and his reputation had taken a hit. Now he finally had a chance to see exactly how I was pulling this off. Director Zhang Wansan of the Education Bureau leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the empty air. A moment later, the virtual projection for the 9th rank position flickered to life. A tall, young figure appeared on the screen. It was me. I was dressed in a sleek black combat suit, my expression hard and my eyes filled with focus. In my hands, I gripped a 2-meter-long obsidian spear. The tip was razor-sharp, stained with fresh, crimson blood that gave the weapon a terrifying glint. At my feet lay the corpses of several massive beasts, their breathing long gone. A few yards away, another beast cowered, whimpering, too terrified to step forward. The image was striking, the black suit, the long spear, and the fallen monsters. A sharp, powerful aura seemed to radiate right through the screen. Suddenly, I moved. My spear lunged out like a dragon taking flight. It was a blur of motion. Before the remaining beast could even blink, the spear tip drove through its skull, killing it instantly. Later, back in the quiet of my own space, I was interrupted by a visitor. It was Li Yiming, one of the students from the martial arts class. He looked nervous as he handed me a bag of fruit and snacks. "Teacher, I wanted to bring you something," he said, his voice unusually soft. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. Li Yiming cracked a smile, his tension breaking. "I'm serious, old Su. I really appreciate what you've done. I'll listen to you from now on and train hard." I felt a genuine sense of warmth. These kids were stubborn and a bit wild, but they weren't bad at heart. Seeing him show gratitude like this made me feel like I was getting through to them. But as I looked in the bag, I noticed a red envelope tucked inside. I pulled it out and tried to hand it back. "The snacks are fine, but I don't need this," I said firmly. "Come on, it's not much. Just a gesture," he insisted. "I want our relationship to be pure, not stained by money. Having your heart in the right place is enough." He hesitated, then slowly took the envelope back. "Old Su, I really didn't misjudge you. From the moment you walked into the classroom, I knew you were different. Tall, handsome, and you've got this incredible aura." "Stop," I cut him off. "Don't stop. Keep going." He rolled his eyes. "You're really shameless, you know that?" He paused, his expression turning serious. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Do you know about the Qin family?" I froze. Old Lu had warned me about them earlier, and his cryptic words had been bothering me. Since Li Yiming came from a martial arts clan, He might know the gossip. Which Qin family? The one with the woman from the testing hall? Yeah, her, Li Yiming said. I've seen her a few times. We aren't close, but I know their situation. Tell me about it. She'd never look at a guy like you. Besides, she's from a major clan. Her marriage is probably already arranged for politics. And anyway, he gestured toward his chest, mimicking a large bust. She's way out of your league. Don't hit me. I'm done. I lowered my hand. It's not about that. I just want to know their status. It clicked. Other clans were circling like vultures, waiting to tear them apart. I couldn't help but laugh. I'd love to teach you, but can you even learn? I'm just going to graduate high school and rot. Stop that, I said, my voice sharp. You aren't a failure. After observing you closely, I've realized something. Little brother, you have the potential to be a god of war. Li Yiming scratched his head, looking at me like I was insane. Old Sue, are you blind? I'm serious. The time just hasn't come yet. And when will that be? When the time is right. He sighed. That's a lot of words to say absolutely nothing. As soon as Li Yiming left, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. I never expected that being a teacher would feel like starring in a spy movie. I shut the door and sat down to meditate, starting my usual nightly cultivation routine. Meanwhile, outside the faculty dormitory, Li Yiming was trying to be stealthy as he slunk away. But in the dim shadows of the landscaping, a pair of eyes watched him with deep suspicion. It was Zhu Tao. He was hiding in the bushes, observing Li Yiming's every move. Zhu Tao had spent the entire evening deep in thought. He had finally decided to secretly cripple his own cultivation and start over from scratch. It was a massive risk, and he couldn't let his family know. However, at his age, the Martial Arts Association required a guardian to be present for such a procedure. Zhu Tao had been agonizing over who to ask, and eventually, he realized his only option was me. He was on his way to my room when he spotted Li Yiming coming out. That little fence-sitter, Zhu Tao thought, his lip curling in a sneer. He couldn't believe there was already a traitor in their ranks. He wondered what kind of bribe I'd given Li Yiming to flip him so easily. Then again, he realized he wasn't exactly in a position to judge. Once Li Yiming disappeared into the distance, Zhu Tao bolted out of the bushes. He moved like an arrow, sprinting into the dormitory building. A moment later, he was standing outside my door. He hesitated for a second, feeling the sting of embarrassment. Then he gritted his teeth and shook it off. As long as he wasn't the one feeling awkward, the awkwardness belonged to someone else. Asterisk knock. 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 Asterisk, I had just entered a meditative state when the sound pulled me back. I figured Li Yiming had forgotten something and come back. I opened the door, but I didn't see a face. Instead, I saw a teenage boy standing on the stone ledge of the hallway, his hands tucked behind his back. He was staring up at the moon, looking lonely and dramatic. It is lonely at the top, he said slowly, his voice trailing off into a heavy silence. I blinked, waiting. And what's the next line? Zhu Tao's face turned bright red instantly. He raised his voice, trying to regain his dignity. I said, it is lonely at the top. You can't even finish the poem, so why are you acting like a main character? I sighed. Get down from there. We're on the 12th floor. You'll break your legs if you fall. He didn't turn around. It is lonely at the top. Fine, fine, I get it. I muttered, playing along just to get him inside. Dancing with one's shadow under the moon. Is it not like being in the human world? Only then did he turn around, his expression cold and aloof. Not bad. You are a man of culture. He hopped down, kept his hands behind his back, and brushed past me into the room without waiting for an invitation. My eye twitched. I hadn't noticed this weird streak in him before. Had practicing the heaven-mending cloud embroidery needle for a few days turned him into a drama queen? Was the mental technique affecting his personality? I closed the door and turned around, only to find him standing by my window, once again gazing at the moon. I ignored his theatrics, sat back down on my mat, and crossed my legs. It's late, I said. What do you want? Since you've asked so sincerely, he said, sounding like he was doing me a favor, I suppose I'll tell you. The technique you recommended is acceptable. It suits my taste. However, the dual cultivation method is just a temporary fix. I've decided to cripple my current foundation and start over. I stared at him, genuinely shocked. You've thought this through? Yes. Then go do it, I said. You don't need to consult me. I cannot let my family know, he admitted. You need to take me to the Martial Arts Association to oversee the process. Get out, I said, rolling my eyes. I didn't even have to think about it. No way. The kid was insane. He wanted me to help him throw away years of progress and massive amounts of family resources without telling his parents? If his family found out I was the one who let him destroy his cultivation, they'd kill me. They'd report me to the school, my career would be over, and I'd probably end up behind bars. Zhu Tao was still staring at the moon. Name your price. It's not about the price, I snapped. Losing my job is the least of my worries. Your family would have me sewing buttons in a prison cell for the rest of my life. You're trying to ruin me. Don't worry, he said confidently. I'll protect you. I'll explain everything when the time comes. There is no room for negotiation on this, I said firmly. If you want to restart, go talk to your parents. Convince them. Let them take you to the association. Zhu Tao went quiet. He let out a long, heavy sigh. You know as well as I do that it's impossible. And after that, he asked. After that, it's your problem, I said, feeling exhausted. Do you really expect me to provide you with high-level techniques forever? If I had that kind of power, would I be sitting here talking to you? Zhu Tao fell silent again. I didn't say another word. I closed my eyes and went back to my meditation, making it clear I wasn't going to help him with this suicidal plan. Teacher, help me, he whispered. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. Seeing that I wasn't budging, his stubborn pride flared up again. Fine, I'll just find someone else to take me. He turned to leave, his hands still tucked behind his back. I stayed still, eyes closed. I'm leaving, he called out. I'm really going. He stopped at the door, his shoulders slumped. Teacher, okay, I'll stop acting cool. Just, please, think of something. Hearing his voice soften, I finally opened my eyes. There is only one way. Convince your parents. Zhu Tao gave a bitter laugh. The coiling dragon god fist is our family's legacy. It's our symbol. They would never let me abandon it. I don't have the power to convince them. If I have to, I'll just do it myself. My heart skipped a beat. Doing it yourself was the most dangerous way to reset your cultivation. People usually only did that in life or death extremes. But these kids in Class 5 weren't exactly normal. With Zhu Tao's obsession with his reputation, he might actually be crazy enough to try it. The survival rate for a self-crippling was barely 20%. I couldn't take the responsibility for his death, but I couldn't let him kill himself either. I looked at him and sighed. I can help you, I said. Zhu Tao's eyes lit up. Really? But not right now, I cautioned. When you reach the 7th rank, come find me. I know a way to let you transition your power without needing to cripple yourself. Zhu Tao froze, his eyes filled with doubt. I feel like you're just tricking me to buy time. I winced internally. He really was the smartest kid in the class. He had seen right through me. In truth, resetting now was the smartest move for him. It would wipe away the conflicting energies and let him start fresh. But I couldn't allow it under these circumstances. I was buying time, but I was buying time for myself. I had the chaos chi, which could potentially solve his problem without a reset, but I wasn't skilled enough to control it yet. I needed time to master the micromanipulations of that energy before I dared to use it on a student. Whether you believe me or not is up to you, I said, putting on my best mysterious master face. That is my promise. I won't help you until you reach the 7th rank, 5th stage, I told him firmly. Zhu Tao didn't even hesitate. He nodded immediately. Fine, I'll listen to you. I'll keep practicing my current dual cultivation method for now. Once I hit that rank, I'm coming for you. It won't take long. I gave him a short nod. Good. You can leave now. I need to start my evening practice. Yes, teacher. I'm going, he said, bowing before finally walking away. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. I felt like a fraud. First, I was playing secret agent with Li Yiming, and now I was acting out a period drama with Zhu Tao. Keeping up these performances for my students was exhausting, but I had no choice. I had accepted the responsibility of Class 5, so I had to see it through. I shrugged off the fatigue and got to work. I pulled out my phone, set the timer, and sat down to meditate. I began circulating the chaos chi through my meridians. It moved at a blistering speed, surging through my body like a flood. When I finally opened my eyes and hit stop on the timer, I stared at the screen. Even though I'd seen it before, the result felt ridiculous. A massive grin spread across my face. Before all this, a single cultivation cycle took me about 28 minutes. That was way below the national average of 21. But now, thanks to the chaos chi and my upgraded meridians, that time had plummeted to 18 minutes. The improvement was terrifying. The best part? I wasn't even fully used to the chaos chi yet. I estimated that once I mastered it, I could push a cycle down to 10 minutes. Historically, that was the speed of a martial god. The gap between us was closing. In the world of martial arts, the foundation is everything. The faster your cycle, the quicker your energy regenerates, and the faster you grow. The only downside was the hunger. My body was burning through energy at an insane rate. I had already stocked my fridge and the office cooler with a mountain of nutrient solution. Usually, a person only does 2 cycles a day. One in the morning to absorb spirit energy, and one at night to solidify the day's gains. Any more than that, and you risk overloading your body or damaging your meridians. But I felt different. My meridians were reinforced. I had a surplus of nutrients. I felt like I could handle 3 or even 4 rounds. I downed 2 bags of nutrient solution and felt no fatigue, no muscle soreness, nothing like the exhaustion I used to feel. I decided to push my limits. I started again, then again. The nutrient bags in the fridge started disappearing. The 4th cycle went smoothly. By the 5th, my muscles started to feel heavy, but I wasn't tired. My meridians held firm. By the 6th cycle, the soreness turned into a dull ache, and my meridians finally started to sting. I had consumed 14 bags of nutrient solution in one sitting. That was $1,400 gone in a flash. I collapsed onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. I could feel my power level shifting. The bottleneck was loosening. My absolute limit was probably 7 cycles, but 6 was enough for today. I didn't want to advance too fast and ruin my foundation. I needed to stay healthy for the sake of Class 5. But there was a bigger problem. I was broke. The $30,000 bonus I just got wasn't going to last long at this rate. Another day of being poor had passed. The next morning, I headed to Class 5. I did a quick head count to make sure everyone was practicing, then slipped away to the library. I needed to find a compatible technique for Yimming. I was halfway through my research when my phone buzzed. It was a message in the faculty group from Lu Jun, the grade dean. He wanted all first-year teachers in the meeting room immediately. Emergency meetings like this usually meant trouble. I hurried to the room. Most of the teachers were already there, whispering nervously. No one knew what was going on. "Quiet down, everyone," Lu Jun said, his face grim as he walked in. "We have a situation. Last night, someone tried to break into the school. A masked rank 6 martial master. The 4 gatekeepers managed to fight him off, but he escaped." The room erupted in hushed gasps. I couldn't believe it. Who was stupid enough to try and storm a school guarded by 4 martial masters? What was his goal? Someone asked. The gatekeepers said he was heading toward the dorms, Lu Jun replied. He was likely targeting the students. The patrol team is investigating, but to be safe, the school board has decided to organize a teacher patrol. We'll be working in pairs after evening self-study to ensure student safety. We had to draw lots for partners. My luck was weird as always. I ended up paired with Chun Ming. Chun Ming was a legend in his own right. He was a former combat instructor who had lost an arm on the front lines against the beasts. He had retired to the school to teach practical combat skills. He hadn't been a teacher much longer than I had, but he carried the heavy, grim aura of a man who had seen too much war. He was 48, 12 years older than me, and notoriously difficult to talk to. I walked up to him, holding my slip of paper. "Hey, Brother Chun. Looks like we're on patrol together." Chun Ming's face was dark and weathered. He gave me a single, silent nod and didn't say a word. I decided not to push it. He wasn't the type for small talk. He spent all his free time training in his room. Once the pairs were set, Lu Jun gave us a final warning. "Keep this quiet. Don't tell the students. We don't want them panicking or losing focus on their training." As I left the room, I couldn't help but wonder if that intruder was coming for my students in Class 5. They were all from wealthy, powerful families, and they were experts at making enemies. Lu Jun must have been thinking the same thing. He pulled me aside after the meeting. "Xiao Su, keep a close eye on Class 5, he whispered. "Don't let them wander off. I have a feeling that masked man was looking for one of them." They're the biggest troublemakers in this school. I wanted to argue that there were plenty of other rich kids in other classes, but I stopped myself. He wasn't wrong. My students practically had targets painted on their backs. I honestly thought this masked martial grandmaster had a screw loose. I couldn't help but mutter a complaint under my breath. Didn't he know our school had for gatekeepers? Lu Jun looked around, making sure no one was eavesdropping before he leaned in. The four old gentlemen? 2 of them got hurt, he whispered. It's not too serious, but keep it quiet. They have a reputation to protect. My scalp went numb. 4 against 1, and the intruder still managed to injure 2 and escape? That was insane. He must be at the peak of the 6th rank, I said, my voice low. Maybe even a half-step martial king. Lu Jun sighed, rubbing his temples. Probably. It's a massive headache. I don't know why things have been so restless since the semester started. I felt a sudden pang of guilt. I wondered if this was some kind of butterfly effect caused by me getting the system. I tried to look innocent, but Lu Jun turned to me. Oh, Xiaosu, I actually have something I need to discuss with you. Director, my stomach hurts. I blurted out, already backing away. Bathroom emergency. Let's talk another day. I turned and bolted. Lu Jun's face twitched. Are you planning to spend the whole day on the toilet? He yelled after me. He looked down at the shattered marble table I'd left behind and sighed. Maybe he'd just have to find a way to grind the evidence into dust. After my evening training, I met up with Chun Ming. Our campus was huge, divided into 3 sections for different grades, each about 5 kilometers apart. The students rarely crossed paths. Chun Ming and I were assigned to patrol the North Gate area. It was the same as always. The one-armed veteran remained silent, giving me a short nod before we started walking. As someone who liked to talk, the silence was agonizing. I found myself envious of the teachers paired with the pretty young women in the first-grade department. Sadly, none of them were my type. I preferred the powerful, Valkyrie style. Eventually, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I glanced at Chun Ming's empty right sleeve. Since he was a veteran, the government would cover most of the cost. With the current subsidies, a high-quality prosthetic wouldn't cost him much at all, and it would give him his dignity back. No need, Chun Ming said, his voice heavy and flat. One hand is enough to kill beasts. I gave him a thumbs up, not knowing how to respond to that. In the future, if you encounter a beast, even a humanoid one, don't show any mercy, Chun Ming added. Understood. I'll remember that, I replied. I secretly thought he was overestimating me. Humanoid beasts were incredibly rare, as powerful as a martial emperor. If I ever ran into one, I wouldn't know if I was the luckiest man alive or the unluckiest. Everyone in the department knew not to bring up the war or his injuries, so I shifted the topic to training. Brother Chun, you know I practice the 9 refinement body art. I don't have much real combat experience. I was hoping you could give me some pointers sometime. My fighting skills were basic, mostly just sparring with classmates back in the day. The 9 refinement technique was purely defensive. Without proper skills, I'd just be a punching bag. Now that I had Chaos Chi and Super Meridians, I needed to learn how to actually fight. Sure, Chun Ming agreed. What level are you at now? 2nd level. Copper Bone, I said, lifting my right hand. I've finished the enchantment on this palm. Chun Ming reached out his left hand and gripped my palm. He paused, a small sound of surprise escaping his throat. What is it? I asked, feigning confusion. The feel of it, it's wrong, Chun Ming said, looking puzzled. It doesn't feel like the 2nd level. It feels more like the 3rd. No, the 4th. I wasn't surprised. I had used Chaos Chi for the enchantment, so the strength was obviously going to be far beyond normal Copper Bone levels. I just didn't have a reference point to know exactly how strong I was. Chun Ming, being a former frontline instructor, had seen it all. How can you tell just by touching it? I asked. Intuition, Chun Ming said seriously. I'm not joking. I acted astonished. Maybe it's because I was stuck at the peak of the martial apprentice stage for so long? Years of accumulation. Chun Ming nodded. It means you've put in hard work. Also, congratulations on promoting to martial master. The school circle was small, news traveled fast. Being an 8th rank martial master meant I could finally hold my head high among the other teachers. Brother Chun, how strong do you think it is? I asked, seizing the chance for a free power assessment. I feel like it's much stronger than before, but I'm not sure if it's just the rank advancement. Chunming thought for a moment. It's somewhere between the 3rd and 4th level. Do you mind if I check other areas? I spread my arms, letting him check. His expression turned strange as he tapped and pressed on my arms and torso. Only your right palm has this level of hardness, he noted. The rest of your body is actually weaker than a typical 2nd-level practitioner. You must really favor that right hand. You've clearly spent a lot of time on it. I felt like he was making a double entendre, but I didn't have proof. Brother Chun, could this palm block a strike from a 7th-rank martial specialist? The palm could, Chun Ming said firmly. But your body couldn't. You're too fragile. If your whole body was as tough as your palm, a 7th rank wouldn't be able to hurt you. You could even survive a single strike from a martial grandmaster. Chun Ming himself was at the peak of the 7th rank. Even with one arm, he was the strongest teacher at the school, likely on par with the vice principal. Thanks for the guidance, Brother Chun, I said. It must have taken you years to get your palm to this level, Chun Ming said, offering a rare bit of encouragement. Don't give up. If you keep focused, you might finish your full-body enchantment by the time you're 50. You have a chance to become a true half-step grandmaster. I nodded quickly. I knew he meant well. He wasn't looking down on me. In fact, based on my talent, he was actually being very optimistic. Before I got the system, a rank 8 peak was probably the absolute limit of my life. Reaching the rank 7-5 Mysteries realm would have been a pipe dream. Martial arts is a slow, grinding process of accumulation. Those who can do it overnight aren't just geniuses. They have massive piles of resources behind them. You can't practice martial arts without money. Still, Old Kai's pointers gave me a lot of confidence in my current strength. Enchanting was easy for me now. As long as I had enough energy, I could do it without a hitch. Once I completed the full-body enchantment and reached Copperbone Mastery, a rank 7 expert wouldn't be able to touch me. I'd be able to withstand the force of 5 powerful strikes. Even if I couldn't kill a rank 5 Grandmaster, I could at least survive one of their palms. If I couldn't win, I could always play dead. I knew the turtle breath technique, after all. As long as a Grandmaster didn't stick around to finish me off, I'd live. Of course, that was just a wild thought. I couldn't imagine why a rank 5 powerhouse would want to kill a teacher like me. It couldn't be because they were jealous of my good looks, right? I realized I'd had a bit of a stereotype about Old Kai. This one-armed guy wasn't actually cold or distant. He was willing to help. He just didn't talk much, which made him seem unapproachable. As we continued our patrol, Old Kai's expression suddenly turned distant. Brother Chen, what's wrong? I asked. The masked rank 5 who showed up last night was very strong, he said out of nowhere. That wasn't a normal peak rank fighter. I blinked. I'd been too busy acting with Li Yiming and Zhu Tao last night to notice anything unusual. You went to watch the fight, Brother Chen? Yeah. I heard some noise and rushed over. He looked toward the edge of the campus. The old masters teamed up and forced him back. The team leader said 2 of the old masters were injured, I noted. Old Kai nodded slightly. Yes, but the other guy didn't get off easy either. He retreated with injuries. Still, it's a bit embarrassing. 4 against 1, and he still escaped. Based on his moves, he's definitely a killer. My face paled a bit. A wanted criminal. No, Old Kai shook his head. He felt more like someone with professional training. He aimed only for vitals. His movement technique was incredible. I'm leaning toward him being an assassin. He likely planned to infiltrate, but he was too arrogant. He underestimated the sensory abilities of the old masters. Someone that arrogant won't give up until the job is done. Until he's dealt with. These patrols are the new normal. He shot a cold, sudden look at me. He might target the teachers. Stay safe. My heart skipped a beat. Better safe than sorry. I decided that starting tomorrow, I'd pause the search for Li Yiming's mental cultivation technique. I needed to focus entirely on the Chaos Chi enchantment. I had to reach Copperbone Mastery as fast as possible to increase my survival rate. That night, back in my dorm, I stayed up late to finish enchanting my other hand. By the early hours of the morning, both my hands had undergone the Copperbone transformation. It was painful, and I had to dip into my savings to buy a massive amount of nutrition fluid. I budgeted 60,000 yuan just to force my way through the Copperbone process. Over the next few days, I only showed up at the martial arts class for morning training and did my nightly patrols. The rest of the time, I was locked in my office or dorm, focusing entirely on enchanting. The patrols remained quiet. The Kunlun patrol team had stepped in to watch the school's perimeter, and the masked grandmaster didn't reappear. Inside my office, I sat cross-legged on the floor, feeling a surge of excitement. After days of grinding, my copper bone was almost complete. Only one part remained, and it was the most critical, the skull. The difficulty lay in control. I had to keep the chi perfectly stable, ensuring the enchantment stayed on the surface of the bone, right under the skin. If I slipped, I could damage my brain or central nervous system. There were plenty of horror stories about this. At the East Sea Martial Arts Normal University, several professors had injured themselves this way. One accidental slip led to a concussion. The worst case was a brain hemorrhage that sent a man straight to the ICU. I was incredibly nervous. I didn't dare start. Even though my proficiency had skyrocketed over the last few days, I didn't trust myself. I was trying to squeeze 30 years of progress into 3 days. I wondered if I should pre-book an ICU bed just in case. I hesitated for a long time. This final step was the key to true copperbone mastery, but the risk was just too high. I needed a way to lower the danger of losing control. I paced and muttered to myself until a crazy idea popped into my head. My teacher's invincibility state. When a student tried to harm me, all damage was neutralized, and I became invincible. If I timed it right and had a student cooperate, they could attack me the moment I lost control. The invincibility would kick in, and the backlash from the chi would be negated. But there was a problem. I had already developed chaos chi. If I let my students use hidden force to attack me like before, my chaos chi would probably swallow their energy before the enchantment was even finished. It wouldn't last long enough. Plus, enchanting required absolute focus. I couldn't multitask. I quickly found a workaround. I sent a message to Li Yiming, telling him to bring his thunder needle to my office immediately. Li Yiming was confused when he got the text. Why did he need a weapon just to go to the office? But he didn't argue. While the rest of the class was playing werewolf in the classroom, he used a bathroom break as an excuse to slip away. He tapped on my door. "Old Sue, I'm here. Open up." I let him in quickly. "Did you bring the needle?" He showed me the spring-loaded device on his arm. "Yeah, I got it. But what are we doing?" "Helping me practice," I said. I grabbed him by the shoulders and gave him strict instructions. "In a moment, I'm going to start meditating. My focus will be entirely internal. I won't be able to talk to you. You have to watch me closely. If you see me twitch, or if anything looks wrong, don't hesitate. Shoot me with the needle instantly." His jaw dropped. "Shoot you? Did I hear that right?" "You heard me," I snapped. Li Yiming scratched his head, his mind spinning. I bet the people who invented the thunder needle never imagined it would be used as a training tool. "Are you ready?" I asked. "I'm starting." All right, he muttered. I didn't waste any more time. I entered a deep meditative state. My awareness of the outside world began to fade as I funneled all my concentration into the chaos chi. I guided it toward my skull. The chi slithered through my body like a snake, occasionally veering off course, forcing me to pull it back with everything I had. Finally, the chaos chi reached my head. The enchantment began. It was like wrapping a fine silk thread around the bone. As the layers built up, the threads fused together to form a solid membrane. The trick was keeping that thread exactly on the surface, not a millimeter deeper. I had to be careful. The chaos chi couldn't penetrate the bone itself. If it leaked inside, the enchantment would fail. I guided the energy, trying to wrap it around the surface of my skull. It was grueling work. Every circle was a battle. Even moving the chi in a straight line felt like trying to steer a snake, and guiding it in a perfect ring was 10 times harder. It didn't take long for things to go wrong. Before I even finished the first loop, the chaos chi veered off course. It dove straight into my skull. A sharp, stinging pain shot through my brain. Li Yiming was watching me like a hawk. The moment he saw my eyelid twitch, he didn't hesitate. He slammed the trigger on his arm. A needle hissed through the air and struck me. He scrambled back immediately, terrified of getting shocked himself. The pain in my head vanished instantly. I felt a surge of relief. It worked. The shock forced the energy back into place. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the chaos chi and started again. The first loop was a mess. I lost control 3 more times, But with Li Yiming's shocks, I managed to stumble through it. I tied a tiny knot in the energy where the ends met to stabilize it. Then, I started the second loop. Time lost all meaning. Half an hour passed. Li Yiming had already fired 36 needles. He scratched his head, staring at me as I sat there cross-legged. He'd seen me survive the thunder needles before, but watching me take hit after hit was just ridiculous. He started to worry. I wasn't waking up, and the power meter on his launcher was dropping. The thunder needle wasn't rechargeable. It ran on a tiny, expensive antimatter battery that cost 50,000 credits to replace. Each battery only lasted for about 500 shots. He'd already used a huge chunk of his total capacity just on me today. "Hope this battery holds out," he muttered, eyes glued to my face. Every time I flinched, he sent another bolt of lightning into my body. He'd fire, retrieve the needle, and wait. Another half hour went by. My internal struggle was getting more intense. The frequency of my errors increased. Li Yiming didn't count the shots, but his power meter hit the 40% mark. "Old Sue," he whispered. I didn't answer. I was too deep in the zone. My perception of the outside world was a blur of static and energy. 1 hour. 2 hours. Li Yiming even turned off his phone so no one from Class 5 would bother us. But now he was panicking. The battery light turned red. He was down to his last 20%, and I showed no signs of stopping. He didn't have a spare. He never imagined he'd burn through a whole battery in a single afternoon. "Damn it, wake up," he hissed. My brow furrowed in pain again. He fired. The meter dipped further. He was down to his last 10 needles. He paced the room like a caged animal. Every time I twitched, he used another one. 9 needles left. 8. Then, his eyes caught the power strip at the corner of the desk. He blinked. I had survived nearly 400 high-voltage needles without a scratch. Would household electricity even hurt me? The needles provided a massive, instant burst of voltage, but it wasn't continuous. The wall outlet was lower voltage, but it was steady. He didn't have a choice. He fired one last needle to stabilize me, then lunged for the power strip. He yanked out all the plugs. The cord was just long enough to reach me. He smashed the plastic casing open, exposing the wires, and jammed my 2 fingers directly into the socket. He rolled back, holding the main plug in his hand like a detonator. He watched my face, sweating. The moment my eyebrows knit together, he slammed the plug into the wall. My face relaxed instantly. "I'm a genius," Li Yiming whispered, letting out a breath. He pulled the plug as soon as I looked calm. He realized he could have saved 50,000 credits if he'd just used the wall outlet from the start. He even thought to himself that next time, I could just hold the wires myself while I practiced. Inside my head, the work was almost done. With the constant stream of electricity, I was moving at light speed. I didn't have time to be elegant. If I failed, I just restarted immediately. I wasn't a natural genius who could master the technique in one go, so I used raw persistence and Li Yiming's assistance to force it. The layers of chaos chi began to fuse. I was at the very top of my skull. I attempted the final seal 20 times. I failed 15 of them. But on the 16th try, the energy locked into place. The enchantment was complete. A smile spread across my face. Li Yiming saw my mouth twitch and thought I was having another seizure. He panicked, thinking the voltage wasn't high enough, and jammed the plug back in. My eyes snapped open. The sudden surge of power was like a jolt to my soul. "Old Sue, you okay?" he yelled. "It was a success," I said, my voice raspy. I looked down at my fingers still jammed into the power strip. "Thanks to you." "My needles died," he explained, quickly pulling the plug. I had to improvise. "It worked fine," I said, standing up. My body felt stiff from sitting so long. I stretched, and as I did, the thin membrane of chaos chi around my bones expanded. A series of loud, rhythmic pops echoed through the room, sounding like firecrackers. It felt incredible. Li Yiming didn't even look surprised. In his mind, anyone who could fight above their rank probably had a training method just as insane as this. I had no idea that I'd end up looking like a human pincushion. Old Kai stared at me, his eyes wide. "Don't tell me your secret body refining technique is just getting electrocuted?" "Of course not," I lied smoothly. "This has nothing to do with that." Old Kai let out a long breath of relief. "Good. That's good. Anyway, you've worked hard. Go get some rest. Wait, he said, holding up his ejection device. The battery is dead. I need to buy a new one. I was in such a good mood that I didn't even hesitate. No problem. I'll reimburse you. How much? 50,000. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Is that battery made of solid gold? Antimatter fuel cell, he replied. I winced internally. My 60,000 yuan budget had just been vaporized in one shot. Still, looking at the bigger picture, it was a steal. People spent tens of millions and still couldn't achieve a bronze bone physique. This wasn't something money could usually buy. I'll owe you for now, I said. I'll pay you back when my year-end bonus kicks in, all right? Old Kai waved me off with a grin. I'm joking. You saved my life. I'm not taking your money. I've got to go. If I'm gone much longer, people will start asking questions. He slipped out of the office quietly. Once he was gone, I slammed my fists together. There was almost no pain. According to Chen Wei, a rank 7 fighter couldn't even scratch me now. Only a rank 5 master could actually draw blood. In terms of defense, I was basically a half-step master. I felt incredible. I decided I had to keep helping Old Kai find new ways to improve his own strength as a thank you. Meanwhile, Old Kai hurried back to the classroom, nervous about his long absence. But when he walked in, he found everyone still hopelessly addicted to their game of werewolf. Nobody even looked up. He felt a bit insulted. He tapped one student on the shoulder. Hey, the guy turned around, looking annoyed. What? You're breaking my concentration. I've been gone for hours. Old Kai snapped. Oh, really? The student blinked. Where'd you go? Old Kai forced a smile. Just walking. Oh, cool. The student turned back to the game. Old Kai fumed silently. He looked around and noticed Zhu Tao was missing again. Zhu Tao had been disappearing after morning practice for days now, but nobody cared. In this class, the students were only close when they were gaming or ganging up on a teacher. Most of them came from powerful families who were rivals anyway. They didn't keep tabs on each other. Up on the roof, Zhu Tao stood against the wind. His eyes were shut tight, and 2 fingers were extended. 10 thin black threads were wrapped around his fingertips, swaying in the breeze. At the end of each thread hung a specialized steel needle. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. He flicked his hand. The needles jerked toward him, all of them burying themselves into his own palm. Damn it, he hissed, pulling them out one by one. I didn't mean for all of them to hit at once. He was practicing the second level of the heaven-mending cloud needle technique. It was a specialized skill that used black threads as a medium to conduct energy into the needles. At high levels, you could hide the needles in your sleeves and strike without warning. Zhu Tao was confident in his energy control, but he lacked a moving target. He couldn't just go around stabbing random people. Then, a face popped into his mind. Su Yang. The man had incredible defensive power. He wouldn't even feel it. That night, I had just finished my patrol and returned to my dorm when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to see a young man standing on the balcony, staring dramatically at the moon. I didn't have time for his theatrics. I slammed the door shut. A moment later, the knocking started again, more urgent this time. Teacher, I'll stop posing. Let me in. I opened the door again, annoyed. I told you, don't come back until you hit rank 7. I'm not helping you until then. It's not that, Zhu Tao said quickly. It's something else. Only you can help me. Fine. Come in. Once inside, Zhu Tao leaned in. I've almost mastered the second level of the cloud needle technique. I need a sparring partner to help me break through to the third. I stared at him. This kid was a total cheat code. That technique was supposed to take years to master, and he'd done it in less than a week. So, what do you need me to do? I asked. Simple. Take off your shirt and let me stab you for a bit. I need to get a feel for the pressure points. I looked at him, unimpressed. You're not worried about killing me? You have your defensive technique, he said, like it was obvious. You won't even feel it. Your attitude is very disrespectful to your teacher, I muttered. Do you want me to kowtow? No, I sighed. I just have one request. If you get into trouble later, don't tell anyone I was the one who trained you. It was a win-win. I pulled off my shirt and braced myself. Zhu Tao pulled out his phone, scrolling through a diagram of human acupuncture points. The atmosphere was a little awkward, so I tried to make conversation. Have you thought about your future lately? I asked. Zhu Tao kept his eyes on the diagram. Since I have this talent, I'm not going to waste it anymore. I have a goal now. I felt a surge of pride. Finally, I was getting through to these kids. What's the goal? Zhu Tao's face turned serious. I have a childhood sweetheart. Once I'm strong enough, I'm going to marry her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This kid looked like a typical rebellious teenager, but he was actually a hopeless romantic. I looked at Zhu Tao's complicated expression and realized what was happening. In these big, powerful families, marriage was rarely about love. It was about politics. Zhu Tao and his childhood sweetheart had grown up together. They had feelings for each other, but because his talent was so poor, he had zero freedom to choose his own future. His girl was likely from another big clan, and in their world, they were just pawns to be traded for alliances. If he wanted a say in his own life, he had to trade strength for it. I sighed and tried to encourage him. Just work hard. If you have enough power, your love story will have a happy ending. I blinked, confused. Huh. That woman thinks she's better than me just because her talent is higher. Zhu Tao snapped, his voice full of resentment. She's been bullying and humiliating me since we were kids. I couldn't beat her, so I just had to take it. He grit his teeth, eyes flashing. Once I'm strong enough, I'm going to marry her, take her home, and make sure she's pregnant so she can't run away. I stared at him. I hadn't been wrong about this kid. He definitely had a bright, albeit terrifying, future ahead of him. He had goals. That's a terrible mindset, I said, putting on my serious teacher face. That's just pure revenge. It'll consume you. You're thinking too small. You need to look at the bigger picture. I stood taller, trying to sound inspirational. You are a flower of our nation, a pillar of the future. Zhu Tao curled his lip. He clearly hated being lectured, but since he needed my help, he didn't argue. Think about it, I continued. If you actually marry her just for revenge, aren't you stuck with her too? That's a lose-lose situation. I decided to drop the lecture for a moment. As a teacher, my job was to build their character, but I hated high and mighty speeches as much as they did. I'd fix his attitude slowly, over time. You know what kind of person you should be, I said softly. You don't have to be a legend. Just be someone who can live with a clear conscience. Zhu Tao nodded slightly. You really are different from other teachers, he muttered. I know. I'm incredibly handsome, but try to look past my physical perfection. Zhu Tao rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Your thick skin is definitely one of a kind among teachers. He went quiet for a second, then added, Anyway, thank you. I smiled but didn't say anything. I knew the saying, talented students are common, but the mentors who can spot them are rare. I mean it, Zhu Tao said seriously. If it wasn't for your guidance, I'd never have touched a true method. I wouldn't even know I had this talent. I won't forget this. I felt a surge of pride. These kids in class 5 weren't bad, they were just bratty. My shoulders are killing me. I'd been spending all my time in the library lately, writing articles to find a compatible cultivation method for Li Yiming. I'd been sitting for days. You have no idea how much I sacrifice for you kids behind the scenes, I joked. Zhu Tao put his full weight into the massage, his face strained with effort. Maybe try sacrificing in front of us next time? If we don't see it, it doesn't count. Fair point, I laughed. Next time, I'll make sure to suffer where you can see me. Zhu Tao worked in silence for a minute, his hands getting tired. Teacher, can I really become a martial god? I coughed. That was a metaphor. You have the potential, the aura, of a martial god. I can't guarantee you'll actually get there. But hey, anything is possible. I paused. For now, let's focus on reaching the 7th rank. Don't get ahead of yourself. Stay grounded. I reminded him that the world was full of geniuses. The students at the first martial arts high school were all family elites. You probably have cousins your age over there, right? Zhu Tao's face went cold. The resentment was palpable. It wasn't surprising. In these massive clans, harmony was a myth. Resources were limited, and if you weren't the favorite, you were the punching bag. A kid like the old Zhu Tao would have been mocked relentlessly. I get it, Zhu Tao muttered. No pain, no gain. I have to suffer to be the best. Not exactly, I corrected him. If you're heading in the wrong direction, suffering is just a waste of time. Before I took over this class, you guys were working hard at failing. Your efficiency was in the negatives. That's why a good mentor matters. I grinned at him. Follow me, and at least your hard work will actually pay off. I feel like you're insulting me, but I can't find a way to argue, Zhu Tao said, shrugging. Think whatever you want. I just want you to have a future. Zhu Tao looked at me with a smirk. And you want your promotion, right? Of course, I admitted. I'm not a saint. Whether I become principal one day depends on how well you guys do. I like you, teacher, Zhu Tao laughed. You're honest. Being your student isn't so bad. Just remember to give me a 5-star review when you graduate. Better than that, Zhu Tao grinned. If I actually become a martial god, I'll put your memorial tablet in the Zhu family ancestral hall. I'll make my whole clan bow and burn incense to you every single day. I'm a man of my word, I said, leaning back. Please don't, Zhu Tao replied quickly. Entering the ancestral hall is the highest honor of my family. I rolled my eyes. I'm not even a Zhu. Why would I want to be in your family shrine? That's a fair point, he admitted. After that honest talk, I felt like the wall between us had finally crumbled. This rebellious student had finally succumbed to my undeniable charm. I looked at him and sighed. If only the rest of the class could understand me like you do. That's not going to happen, Zhu Tao said. He started picking up the steel needles again, poking them into my back with practiced ease. The reason I get you is because I'm different from them. I let him practice. I couldn't feel the pain anyway. How are you different? Everyone in the martial arts class except me is an idiot, he said flatly. I almost laughed. Li Yiming was right. Everyone in this class genuinely despised each other. Then how do you guys even hang out together? No choice, he shrugged. We see each other every day. Besides, if I don't hang out with them, how can I show off my superior IQ? These kids had a twisted way of thinking. You guys should try to be more united, I suggested. Impossible. Our family dynamics make it so we'll all be rivals sooner or later. I frowned. Are you really this realistic at your age? It's unavoidable, he sighed. He looked at my back, seemingly satisfied with the pattern of needle marks he'd left. He had literally stitched the words, "I am your father," into my skin with red welts. It was getting late, so I sent him back to the dorms. I told him to come back every night for practice. As he reached the door, he looked a bit guilty. Teacher, can I ask you something? What is it? You wouldn't actually hit a student, right? I was confused. Of course not. You guys have annoyed me so many times. Have I ever laid a hand on you? Good. Then I'm relieved. He paused. I mean, if you want to win over the others, you can't use force. They respond to soft tactics, not hard ones. I felt a bit touched. The kid was actually looking out for me. Thanks for the tip. I'll remember that. Zhu Tao gave a dry laugh and bolted. He had intended it as a prank, thinking my internal energy would make the needle marks disappear instantly. But half an hour later, the marks were still there, bright and clear. Back in my room, I checked the time. It was time for my final cultivation cycle of the day. This was my 7th round, which was my absolute physical limit. I had to push myself. Zhu Tao's progress with the heaven-mending cloud technique was terrifying. He was almost at the 2nd stage and would hit the 3rd soon. Even if his foundation was shaky, he'd reach the 7th grade 5 mysteries realm in no time. Finding a dual cultivation method for him was urgent. In fact, it was a problem for the whole class. None of them could restart their training from scratch. They had to walk the path of dual cultivation. As they grew stronger, their current methods would become a burden. My only solution was using chaos chi to fuse their conflicting energies into one. To do that, I needed extreme precision with chaos chi. Normally, that kind of control takes decades. By expanding my meridians and grinding through 7 cycles a day, I was compressing years of training into days. It was expensive, but money didn't matter right now. The next day, after checking on the class, I headed back to the library. I was still trying to find a compatible technique for Li Yiming. I had filtered through a huge chunk of the database, but I couldn't find a single match above 100%. I started to wonder if I was looking in the wrong direction, but everything else had even lower compatibility. I decided to stop looking for the others for now. Knowing their lack of compatibility would just give me a headache. I kept searching until my eyes hurt, but found nothing. Finally, I turned to the collection of incomplete scrolls, fragments of ancient techniques kept for reference. I picked a fragmented leg technique and ran the simulation. Compatibility check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 34%. Wait, there were plus and minus signs next to the result. The missing parts of the scroll were marked with question marks. meaning the compatibility could go up or down if the technique were completed. A bold idea struck me. Could I modify an existing technique to force a higher compatibility? Most techniques are divided into layers. My body refinement art had 9, Zhu Tao's had 6. I wondered if removing a layer would change the score. I pulled up the Heaven's Choice leg technique, which currently sat at 87% compatibility. It had 7 layers and could reach the 5 sovereigns realm. I created a new document and deleted the first layer. Failure. Missing critical components. I restored the first layer and deleted the 7th layer instead. Compatibility check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 143%. My eyes nearly popped out. Deleting the final layer jumped the score by 60%? Was it because the technique was too high level for him to handle? I checked the details. The 7th layer only affected the ceiling of the power. Without it, he could only reach the 7th grade realm. I tried deleting the 6th layer. Compatibility check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 278%. The score doubled again. Now the technique only had 5 layers left. The ceiling was lower, but the fit was becoming perfect. I deleted the 5th layer. Compatibility check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 368%. I scratched my head. I had turned the Heaven's Choice technique into a crippled version, but for Li Yiming, it was now the perfect manual. I couldn't delete anymore. The first 4 layers were the core, but I had found my answer. The last 3 layers of the technique were the advanced sections. When I tried to delete them, the system flagged the file, warning me that missing critical components made it impossible to adapt. I wondered if the sky-mending cloud needle art would work better. I pulled up the copy and tried trimming it from the end forward. But the moment I deleted the final layer, the compatibility score plummeted to 224%. I couldn't go any further. The first 5 layers of that technique were all essential. You couldn't skip a single one. Based on the feedback from the data, Li Yiming was only suited for the first 4 layers of the Heavenly Whirl leg. The 3 layers after that would actually slow him down. However, this created a massive problem. The ceiling was way too low. He would only be able to reach the entry stage of the 7th grade 5 sovereign realm. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This meant that once Li Yiming hit that entry stage, he'd have to swap his cultivation method immediately. If he didn't, his progress would stall completely. Of course, that wasn't an absolute rule. If someone had incredible talent and a deep understanding of martial theory, they could theoretically evolve a basic technique into a high-level one on their own. I hadn't met anyone like that yet. I certainly didn't think Zhu Tao or Li Yiming had that kind of genius in them. I couldn't gamble on them figuring it out themselves. But my options were limited. I only had access to basic manuals. I didn't dwell on it for long. I saved the first 4 layers of the Heavenly Whirl leg and got back to work. I still had dozens of manuals to filter through. I had to find the absolute best fit for Li Yiming. I refused to settle for anything less than perfection. Suddenly, a surge of pure energy flooded my body. At the same time, a system notification chimed in my head. Mission complete. Novice gift pack has been sent to your inventory. Please check. I snapped out of my thoughts and immediately checked Zhu Tao's stats. Sure enough, he had jumped from grade I to grade H. The system only tracked major realms, so his overall rank looked the same, but I knew this was his second minor breakthrough. He was now at the peak of the 8th grade martial forest realm. His growth speed was insane. It looked like using me as a punching bag last night had really given the kid some inspiration. I quickly guided the influx of energy into my meridians, converting it and storing it in my dantian to be consumed slowly. Normally, this kind of rapid energy storage causes a sharp, stinging pain near the lower abdomen, similar to a localized cramp. The intensity usually depends on the person, but I felt nothing. I wasn't sure if it was because my meridians had expanded or if the feedback loop from Zhu Tao had triggered some hidden protection. Regardless, it was a win. I wasn't going to overthink it. With the energy settled, I eagerly opened the novice gift pack. Inside were 2 items, a unique skill called Teacher's Majesty and a boundary-breaking pill. I didn't hesitate. I used the skill immediately. Teacher's Majesty, a unique epic grade active skill, consumes stamina to intimidate students and instill a sense of awe. Duration and cost depend on the user's condition. Only works on students bound to your class. No cooldown. This was exactly what I needed. The brats in Class 5 only left me alone because they couldn't physically hurt me. They still didn't respect me. With this, I'd see who dared to get cocky. My excitement grew as I looked at the boundary-breaking pill. I couldn't hide the grin on my face. The pill allowed a user to ignore any bottleneck and force a breakthrough, valid for any level below the 5 sovereign realm. In the world of martial arts, the hardest hurdle was moving from the peak of the 7th grade into the 5 sovereign realm. Everything before that was a matter of accumulation. You just put in the work and you grew. But the 5 sovereign realm was a qualitative change. It was the moment you truly became a powerhouse. That single step had forced countless people to give up their dreams. For me, that hurdle no longer existed. This pill was worth more than any luxury villa or sports car. Once I stepped into the 5 sovereign realm, money would never be an issue again. I tucked the pill away safely, saving it for the future. My celebration was cut short by a new mission notification. It felt like a bucket of cold water over my head. Main mission updated. All students in the class must reach Grade D evaluation. Reward, 5G gift pack. No time limit. Raising their strength wasn't the hard part. The hard part was getting the Class 5 delinquents to actually cooperate. If the secret of our dual cultivation method leaked out, considering their family backgrounds, I'd be lucky if I only ended up in prison. I needed to master my Chaos Chi faster. If I could fuse the 2 types of energy perfectly, the risk of exposure would vanish. But before that, I had to test my new skill. I had been looking for a reason to put these kids in their place. I walked down to the classroom. Unlike other classes where students were sweating and training, the kids in Class 5 were gathered around a desk, playing cards and laughing. They were experts at everything except actual martial arts. Zhu Tao wasn't there. He was probably off training alone somewhere. I stood at the door, watching them. I knew the skill drained stamina, so I couldn't just blast the whole room at once. If I passed out from exhaustion, I'd never live it down. I decided to pick a single target for a test run. My eyes landed on Sun Zhao. He was right in the middle of a heated game of Fight the Landlord. Perfect. I walked into the room with my hands behind my back. The students glanced at me, then went right back to their game. They didn't care that I was there. I stepped up behind Sun Zhao and peered at his hand. He's got 3 2s and a pair of aces, I said calmly. Sun Zhao's face turned bright red. He spun around, slamming his cards down. Are you looking for trouble? Get the hell out of here. My eyes narrowed. I activated it. Teacher's Majesty. Instantly, I felt my stamina begin to drain rapidly. But the change in Sun Zhao was immediate. His aggressive expression crumbled. His eyes darted away, his shoulders slumped, and he looked like a kid who had just been caught stealing. He swallowed hard and turned back to the table, staying silent. The other 2 players were stunned. They couldn't believe Sun Zhao was backing down. Too bold, I said, puffing out my chest and letting out a cold snort. You dare speak to your teacher like that? Outside. Now. I turned on my heel and walked out of the classroom without looking back. The students of Class 5 looked up, their faces full of confusion. Usually, we stayed out of each other's way and kept a fragile peace. They couldn't understand why I was suddenly acting out. More importantly, they didn't believe Sun Zhao would ever listen to me. But to their absolute shock, Sun Zhao hesitated for a split second, stood up, and followed me out of the room. He didn't even look back at his card game. The rest of the class rushed to the door, peering out to see what was happening. Sun Zhao stood in front of me with his head down, silent. He didn't know why he was doing it. Normally, he didn't give a damn about me, but today, something felt wrong. He was afraid. He couldn't even pinpoint what he was scared of, but he couldn't bring himself to look me in the eye. Inside, I was laughing my head off. On the outside, I kept my expression cold and stern. I asked him who gave him permission to play cards during practice hours. I told him he was being completely disrespectful. Sun Zhao's temper flared instantly. He knew I was targeting him specifically since everyone else was playing cards too. He looked up, ready to snap back and curse me out. But the moment he saw my face, radiating that intense teacher's majesty, the words died in his throat. I barked at him to stand straight. He did it instinctively, his body snapping to attention. His mind was a war zone of anger and awe. My stamina was draining fast, and I could see his legs twitching as he tried to resist the pressure. Fortunately, My meridians were already expanded and reinforced by chaos chi. Even if my raw power hadn't spiked yet, my physical endurance was on another level. I decided to use this moment to make an example out of him. The students watching from the doorway were speechless. They couldn't believe Sun Zhao was letting me walk all over him. I kept the pressure on, lecturing him about how he didn't act like a member of a prestigious clan. I told him he was wasting his life, and that people would only look down on him. I knew these words wouldn't change a rebel like him overnight, but I had to establish my authority. After 10 minutes, my stamina was hitting the red zone. I had to end this before I collapsed. I gave a cold snort, told him to get back to work, and walked away toward my office with my hands behind my back. Once I was out of sight, Sun Zhao felt the invisible weight lift. He turned around only to find the entire class staring at him like he was a freak. His face turned bright red. They started mocking him, asking why he didn't just fight me. They called him a coward. Some even accused him of taking a bribe to put on a show for me. Sun Zhao tried to defend himself, but he couldn't explain the fear he had felt. He eventually snapped, told them to believe whatever they wanted, and stormed off. Li Yiming watched him go, feeling suspicious. He thought Sun Zhao was a fellow undercover ally who had secretly joined my side. It looked too much like a stage performance, yet Sun Zhao's frustration seemed genuine. It was strange. Back in my office, I peeked through the window and watched Sun Zhao leave in a huff. I smiled to myself. This was a perfect 3 birds with 1 stone play. I had established my power, intimidated the class, and created a rift between them. Class 5 used to be a solid block of defiance, but now there was friction. If they didn't stick together, I could take them down one by one. I just needed to let Sun Zhao stew for a few days before I made my next move. Sun Zhao was fuming. He couldn't stay in the classroom with everyone laughing at him, so he headed to the roof to cool off. When he tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. It was blocked from the other side. Already in a foul mood, he didn't think twice. He slammed his foot into the door, kicking it open with a loud bang. He stepped out and froze. In the small pavilion on the roof, Zhu Tao was sitting there with a needle in one hand and a piece of clothing in the other. He looked like a statue. Zhu Tao always blocked the door so he could have privacy, assuming anyone who found it locked would just leave. He never expected someone to kick it down. They stared at each other in an awkward silence. Sun Zhao's expression turned mocking. He asked what Zhu Tao was doing. Zhu Tao remained calm, claiming his clothes were torn and he was just mending them. Sun Zhao gave a long, meaningful "oh." He looked at the sewing kit and smirked, sensing a chance to get some leverage. He turned to leave, clearly planning to tell the others. Zhu Tao realized the danger immediately. He blurred across the roof, moving faster than Sun Zhao could react, and blocked his path. He demanded that Sun Zhao swear an oath of secrecy. Sun Zhao laughed it off, thinking they were equal in strength. He told Zhu Tao that even if he talked, there was nothing Zhu Tao could do about it. A few seconds later, Sun Zhao was stumbling back, clutching his chest. The pain was agonizing. As Zhu Tao walked toward him with a cold, murderous glare, Sun Zhao realized he was outmatched. He surrendered immediately. He swore a ridiculous oath never to speak of the sewing, just to get Zhu Tao to stop. Zhu Tao gave a cold snort and let him go. Sun Zhao rubbed his chest, shocked. He asked when Zhu Tao had reached the middle or even high rank. Zhu Tao didn't answer. He just told Sun Zhao to get lost and warned him one last time to keep his mouth shut. Sun Zhao and Zhu Tao had fought just a few days after school started. Back then, they were perfectly matched. Neither of them could get the upper hand. But during that brief exchange just now, Sun Zhao realized everything had changed. Zhu Tao's speed and strength were on a completely different level. Sun Zhao had tried to counterattack once, but Zhu Tao evaded him with a simple, fluid motion. He had no way to fight back. He was stunned. He couldn't understand how Zhu Tao's power had exploded so suddenly. Then it clicked. Sun Zhao remembered the bet. After Zhu Tao lost to Su Yang had taken over his training. Since that day, Zhu Tao had become a ghost. He stopped hanging out with the group. He spent every night locked away in his dorm room. It had only been a single week. In 7 days, Zhu Tao's strength had reached a level that was honestly ridiculous. He had to be at the high rank now. There was no other explanation for that kind of gap. Sun Zhao narrowed his eyes. He focused on Zhu Tao's hands. He had noticed the bandages on Zhu Tao's fingertips before, but he hadn't thought much of it. Now, he realized those injuries were the key. It all connected to the training Su Yang had assigned. He began to wonder if the sewing was actually what Su Yang called the iron-severing technique. It had to be a secret method. He realized he was looking at a hidden path to power that he never would have believed existed.